Chapter 1296. Next are the Dark North Academy, Cloud Sea Academy, Thunderclap Academy, and Bitter Sea Academy. Apart from them, the other academies and powers are nothing to be afraid of. However, don't think that it's just a simple competition. Whoever obtains the most spiritual items of heaven and earth and ultimate skill inheritances will win. This is a competition without any rules. The strong will be respected. When the time comes, killing and robbing will definitely occur. It's even possible that some forces will join forces. Therefore, you must be careful. At the same time, you must be prepared to join forces. Better safe than sorry, as the only top academy, Deep Ancient Academy probably won't be able to lower themselves to ask for outside help. However, the other 4 first-rate academies will definitely do the same. As for who they will invite, we don't know for the time being. In short, treat this seriously and be careful. 1 back, 5 back, Chen Wanxiang led the 4 of them as he quickly flew forward. At the same time, he gave instructions to Chen Hao and Wan Yishui. Chen Wanxiang didn't need to say much to the arrogant Xiao Mantian's Dao companion. They were one of the more famous Grand Luo experts in the great world of CND. They had acted as outside help many times and were experienced and powerful. What Chen Wanxiang said was only the most basic information. Qi. In the chaotic space, rumbling sounds could be heard. It was like a spatial storm as they moved forward at lightning speed. Even with such astonishing speed, they still needed 10 days to reach their destination. Chen Wanxiang didn't feel anything when he was giving instructions, but after he finished, the atmosphere between Chen Hao and Wan Yishui became a little strange. It was unknown whether Chen Wanxiang did it intentionally or not, but when he protected the 2 of them, he also protected Chen Hao and Wan Yishui in an energy seal, just like how he protected Xiao Mantian and his Dao companion. It could be said that they were very close to each other, and the faint fragrance of Wan Yishui's body could be clearly smelled. The 2 of them stared at each other for a full minute. Only then did Wan Yishui snort and turn her face to the side with a slightly red face. The fatty shrugged indifferently. He couldn't help but smile. He found that this girl was quite cute. It was just that she was too fierce in the arena battle, causing him to use the divine art of buttocks to suppress her. More importantly, she sent him a sound transmission and said very shameless and flirtatious words. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so brooding right now. After all, although Wan Yishui losing to Fatty in the beginning was embarrassing, it definitely didn't exist now. Fatty had even taken care of first seat Yun Tian. What was there to be embarrassed about? Take your eyes off me. Perhaps sensing Fatty's gaze, Wan Yishui, who didn't want to lose his temper in public, maintained an unchanged expression and suddenly transmitted a message to Chen Hao. TSK. I say, Sister Shui, aren't you being too nosy? It seems that you have a deep prejudice against me. Why don't you find some time and let me talk to you? Scram. Fatty's words infuriated Wan Yishui so much that he almost exploded. Find some free time. Find some time. Let Lord Fatty play with you, you don't have to doubt it. You didn't hear me wrong. The number 1 pleasure in my life is to play with little girls like you. Rolling around in bed is quite interesting. When the time comes, I'll let you have a taste of Lord Fatty's 2 great chain divine techniques. Your love for Lord Fatty won't be in vain. The first style of Lord Fatty's chain divine technique, buttocks divine technique. When my buttocks press down, I'll sit on all the beauties in the world. The second style, golden spear does not fall. Ha ha ha. Fatty's words made Wan Yishui involuntarily recall the shameless words Fatty had said to her during the arena battle. Ha ha ha. Anger is harmful to the body. Calm down, calm down. Don't hold it in. Our cooperation has just begun. The principal said that you should cooperate with Fat Bro well, shameless. I won't let you off, humph. Wan Yishui was indeed holding it in. Her face was red and green, and her delicate body was trembling slightly. She was absolutely furious, but in front of the principal, she couldn't lose her temper. Furthermore, even if she did, would it be of any use? Qi. Wani Shui suddenly used a sword of her mind to cut off the anger in her heart. At the same time, she blocked off her 6 senses. Out of sight, out of mind. If this continued, she was afraid that she would lose her composure. No matter how much she hated this damnable fatty, she had to endure it. After all, this was the first time she had received an academy mission, and it was such an important one. To her, it was an unprecedented opportunity. No matter what, she had to do her best to complete it. To be able to cut it off so easily, your mental state and willpower are not bad? Looks like the medicine I used is not strong enough. Fatty thought in his heart, and did not continue to provoke her. Looking at Xiao Mantian and his partner who were sitting back to back, as if they had already entered a state of enlightenment, Chen Hao's eyes flashed with a trace of seriousness. Even though Chen Hao didn't want to admit it, he had to admit that Xiao Mantian and his partner did indeed make him feel threatened. What he was proud of was perhaps only their outer appearance. How could a genius who didn't even want to waste this little bit of time not be strong? Phew! Fatty turned his head and heaved a sigh of relief, blowing Wani Shui's long hair. He seemed to be deep in thought, and slowly entered a state of cultivation. Perhaps it was because the teachers in charge of the 2 associations were best friends, or perhaps it was because of some unknown reason, but the Painting Association and the Ancient Martial Arts Association had decided to hold an exchange meeting on the same day and at the same place. The purpose of this exchange meeting was to welcome the new members of the association. Big brother, second brother, tell me the truth, how do you compare to that damnable fatty? Third brother, where did your confidence go? You have to know that you are the head of the 4 great talents of the great planet, and you are an expert in both painting and calligraphy. In the younger generation, not to mention the great planet, even in the great world of CND, how many people are better than you? Li Yuan merely created a unique style, and his painting skills are far from yours. Your painting is definitely much better than his. That's right. Third brother, there's one more thing. Don't forget that painting skills are only one aspect. What's more important is still fame. With the same skills, fame is the door that shakes people's hearts. Unknowingly, it will add a layer of halo. How can your fame be compared to his? Big brother, second brother, since you said so, I am relieved. In this exchange meeting, I must surpass him. Teacher Rulin will definitely like my painting. It contains my love for Teacher Rulin from the bottom of my heart, a love that will never change until death. Third brother, you are so infatuated. But second brother, I support you. In terms of ancient martial arts, you will see how your second brother slaps his face, ha ha ha. Let's go, it's almost time. Murong Qianhua, Xian Yuanchen, and Tang Hu had been waiting for this exchange meeting for a long time. Especially Tang Hu, who had been holding back his anger. No matter what, he had to win the glory that belonged to him in the exchange meeting, and most importantly, win the favor of Teacher Rulin. Unfortunately, they did not know that Fatty was already outside the Great Planet, and was destined to be absent. Chapter 1297. We're almost there. Look, this area is in the chaotic space, right at the intersection of the passages of the 5 main stars. Usually, flying machines and cultivators above true immortal level pass by here frequently. Therefore, before we found out, many experts must have sent their disciples, trusted aides, and other cultivators from the Daluo Golden Wonderland into here. There's no doubt that this is a potential danger, so you have to be careful. After flying for 10 days, Chen Wanxiang finally arrived at the area where the secret realm was exposed. At the same time, he removed their guards. Xiao Mantian suddenly opened his eyes and said proudly, they're just loose cultivators without any organization. The more, the better. If we run into any of them, they'll only become my free labor. Don't let your guard down and act cautiously. Although these people are mostly a motley crew, there's no lack of experts. Especially now that the great era has arrived and the Emperor's stars have appeared, it's hard to say if there's any soul of all things who has awakened their memories. We have to be careful, Dean Cheng is really steady, Xiao Mantian said calmly with a smile. After saying that, he closed his eyes and stopped talking. Obviously, Chen Wanxiang's words had no effect on him. Dean, what do you mean by the great era has arrived, the emperor's stars have appeared, and the soul of all things? However, Chen Hao suddenly opened his eyes wide and asked curiously. He was even more shocked. Just from the literal meaning, Chen Hao could guess a thing or two. The soul of all things. Wasn't the little nurse Lu Hui the soul of all things who was the reincarnation of an immortal emperor? Chen Hao knew very well how powerful Lu Hui was. Chen Wanxiang glanced at the fatty, then told Chen Hao about the emperor's stars that had recently shaken the entire cultivation world. To Chen Wanxiang's admiration, not only was fatty not worried in the slightest after he understood the situation, his expression was instead filled with uncontrollable excitement. Without a doubt, it was a type of battle intent that was hidden in his bones, a battle intent to compete with the strong. Chen Wanxiang had never seen a true spirit of all existences before, and he didn't know how monstrous it would be. However, Chen Wanxiang was clear that under normal circumstances, spirits of all existences would hide themselves before they truly awakened. And the fatty who dared to compete with the spirit of all existences, could he be the reincarnation of an immortal emperor? Chen Wanxiang could not be sure, and no one could be sure. So many people. A few minutes later, Chen Hao and the others saw figures standing proudly in the air or sitting cross-legged on the star fragments. Basically, they were in groups of 5, and the leaders were extremely powerful old men. Obviously, they were leaders of forces like Chen Wanxiang. The other 4 were 2 men and 2 women from the Daluo Golden Wonderland. Every one of them had a very powerful aura. Among the nearly 10,000 people present, even the weakest one would be above average in a first-rate academy. What a powerful aura! Is he from the University of Dahua? How can he be so strong? The moment Chen Wanxiang, Chen Hao, and the other 2 appeared, they attracted the attention of everyone present. The probing telepathic thoughts of the experts pressed down unscrupulously. Unfortunately, under Chen Wanxiang's deliberate protection, nobody could see through the disguise that Xiao Mantian and his wife had put on in advance. They could only sense the powerful auras emanating from them. Ha, Dean Cheng, it's just as old man guessed. You came so late, where did you get the external aid from? His aura is quite strong. Don't say you didn't invite him. Old man only invited 2, and these 2 are disciples of our University of Dahua. The old guys gathered together as they spoke. The young men and women beside the old guys gathered around Chen Hao, Wan Yishui, and Xiao Mantian's wife. Wan Yishui, you can come. At this moment, among the several old men and dozens of male and female disciples who had gathered around, a male disciple looked at Wan Yishui in surprise. What's wrong with me coming? Wan Yishui said angrily, her face turning red when she saw the person who had spoken. Obviously, the other party's tone was full of contempt, which made Wan Yishui feel embarrassed. Because, in the past, she really couldn't compare to the other party. Senior Hao, you know her. Some time ago, I met her in a mission. The battle team she was in, they couldn't even withstand a single blow. They only had some poise, cough, her strength is very ordinary. To think that she was chosen to come here, it's really strange. Wan Yishui was so angry that her face turned green and red, but she couldn't refute. Scram! But at this moment, a cold voice suddenly sounded out. Wan Yishui was slightly taken aback, but the fatty smiled heartlessly and looked at Xiao Mantian, who had disguised his aura and appearance. That sharp gaze was like a sharp sword that emitted a cold light, and it was terrifying. What did you say? The young man who had spoken just now frowned, and his face turned ugly. I said, scram. Boom. A majestic and terrifying aura suddenly gushed out from Xiao Mantian's body, but it seemed to have condensed into a line and was directed towards the young man who had spoken. Wang. Just as the young man's face turned grim and worried, a figure who had also concealed his presence and appearance suddenly stepped out from behind him and stood in front of the young man. Brother, what kind of treatment did the University of Dahua give you? Why are you working so hard? We're just external aid, why are you so serious? Of course, I was forced by you to help this little beauty. Oh. I understand, it's not that the University of Dahua gave you good treatment, but you've taken a liking to this little beauty, right? Bosom friends. It's a pity that as external aid, I can't just stand by and watch you make a move, right? It's you. Xiao Montian's brows furrowed. Even he didn't think that the other party would be able to talk so casually under his aura. More importantly, when he heard the other party's words, he instantly thought of someone. You know me. That shouldn't be. My concealment skills are definitely top-notch, and furthermore, I have the support of the Dean of the Northern Nether Academy. Oh. I understand, you're trying to trick me, he. Ah. The person who had spoken suddenly exclaimed as he was laughing, and stared at Xiao Mantian without saying anything else. Everyone naturally knew that Xiao Mantian must have revealed the other party's true identity through voice transmission. Don't talk nonsense with me, since I'm the external aid of the University of Dahua, whoever dares to touch them will be touching me. Including you. Xiao Mantian said to the young man in front of him as he pointed at Wani Shui, Chen Hao, and his Dao companion Feng Hanwei, who was standing some distance away from him. It can't be, right? Brother, you're really domineering. Since you know who I am, do you really think that you're stronger than me? I'm not a coward. Chapter 1298. Although the person who spoke was surprised that Xiao Mantian had seen through his identity, there was no fear in his heart. There was still a faint smile on his face, and his tone was relaxed and mocking. Is that so? Then go ahead and try. Xiao Mantian's eyes were as sharp as swords as he said coldly. I wasn't interested at first, but since you said so, I'll definitely satisfy you. You have to be prepared. Threats? I hate threats the most. Not to mention them, even you would dare to make a move. Let's wait and see. Xiao Mantian said coldly. He was ready to fight. However, this was clearly not the time to make a move. Both of them knew this. At this moment, a stream of light suddenly appeared, and a majestic aura attracted everyone's attention. Thick Ancient Academy. The crowd exclaimed after seeing the symbol on the person's chest. Thick Ancient Academy was the only top-notch academy among all the competing forces. It was undoubtedly the strongest competitor in the eyes of all the forces. Young Master of Saber and Sword, Ding Hao. I didn't expect him to come. The auras of the four are very strong. Ding Hao seems to be even stronger than the last time we met. Who is Ding Hao? Is he very strong? You don't even know Ding Hao. Well, you just came to the great world of CND not long ago and haven't participated in the inter-school competition, so it's normal that you don't know him. Look, amongst the four of them, the one with the weakest aura and the most ordinary aura was Ding Hao. However, there was probably no one who hadn't recognized him after participating in the inter-academy competition that occurred once in 1,000 years. The young Master of Saber and Sword, Ding Hao. Many people have been deceived by his appearance. This person has participated in 8 inter-school competitions and is one of the best among the geniuses of the top-notch academies. He cultivates in both saber and sword, and his saber and sword intent go hand in hand. His strength is extremely terrifying. In the most recent inter-school competition, I heard that he was preparing to enter the Hongmeng domain. I didn't expect that he hasn't gone yet. With him here, not to mention that we didn't ask for external help, even if we did, it would be difficult for us to win. Yeah, we should avoid the Thick Earth Academy as much as possible. They aren't people we can provoke, the crowd was discussing softly. They were all private conversations that were controlled within a small area, but Chen Hao, who had an abnormal perception, could clearly hear them. Chen Hao could not help but sigh when he sensed the arrival of the Thick Earth Academy and the other major factions. There were so many experts. It was definitely not an easy task to obtain victory in this mission. Wang. Not long after, all the cultivators at the golden celestial stage of the great all-embracing heaven were surrounded by endless celestial light. More than 3,000 powerful true celestial kings joined forces to break the barrier of the primitive secret realm and send them in. Chi! 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 Wisps of brilliant immortal rays swept across the sky. Some were as quick as lightning, while others were slower. They appeared in the rift of the mystical ground from different angles. Chen Hao and Wan Yishui sat cross-legged facing each other in the powerful protective shackles formed by the immortal light. Their legs were almost touching each other, and their faces were very close to each other. Neither of them could move. Next to Chen Hao and Wan Yishui were Xiao Mantian and his Dao partner, Feng Hanwei, who were also facing each other. Sister Shui, calm down. This is just the beginning. There's still 1 hour left. The fatty looked at Wan Yishui, who was full of hostility, and said softly with a smile that deserved a beating. The immortal rays were used to prevent people from getting too close to the mystical ground. Therefore, when they entered the mystical ground, Chen Hao and the others were bound by the immortal rays and would not regain their freedom until 1 hour later. Shut up. Why do you keep staring at me? If you don't look at me, how do you know I'm looking at you? You, humph. Just as the fatty was unscrupulously teasing Wan Yishui, Feng Hanwei snorted coldly in extreme displeasure. Her arrogant peacock-like eyes were filled with intense disdain and disgust. She turned her head to look at the fatty and Wan Yishui, and said condescendingly, "Did your dean send you here to flirt? I don't know if you're ignorant and fearless, or if you're just heartless. There are so many powerful people in this mission that even we have to do our best to deal with them. You guys have it easy. Wei, don't waste your breath on them. Idiots like them won't even know how they died." Xiao Mantian said coldly. Then, he looked at Chen Hao and Wan Yishui and said, "Once the immortal rays are gone, get out of here immediately. We don't have the energy to protect your lives, so we don't need burdens like you." Brother Tian is right. The appearance of Ding Hao and the others is destined to not be a simple matter of obtaining resources. With the strength of the two of you, you'll only be a burden to us. Feng Hanwei agreed. The reason why the two of them said that was because the four of them had mission tokens with them. If Chen Hao and Wan Yishui were with them, according to the cooperation agreement between them and the University of Dahua, they had the obligation to advance and retreat together. In other words, they were responsible for Chen Hao and Wan Yishui's lives. This was not what they wanted. Of course, there were two more important points. Firstly, Chen Hao's and Wan Yishui's auras really made them look down on them. Secondly, the expression and actions of this fatty, Chen Hao, seemed as if he didn't have the slightest bit of reverence towards them, who were high above them. His performance was too casual, which made them feel very disgusted. One had to know, not to mention the disciples of first-rate academies, even the disciples of top academies, who wouldn't be trembling with fear and reverence in front of them after knowing their identities. The words of the two of them made Wan Yishui frown slightly. His expression became serious, and he was a little worried and conflicted. He said, "Brother Xiao, Sister Feng. Although we're not as strong as you, since the dean, however," at this moment, the fatty suddenly interrupted Wan Yishui and said in the same tone as Xiao Mantian, "Shui, don't waste your breath on them. Idiots like them won't even know how they died." The fatty only changed the way he addressed Wei to Shui, and the other words were exactly the same. After saying that, he narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei with disdain. "What did you say?" Xiao Mantian's expression turned cold, and his gaze seemed to have turned into a sharp sword light that shot towards Chen Hao's body. If not for the fact that Chen Hao was restrained by the celestial light, the terrifying pressure would have definitely pressed down on him like a huge mountain. The restriction of the immortal light has disappeared, so get lost immediately. We don't have the energy to protect your lives, so we don't need a burden like you. The fatty narrowed his eyes, as if he did not see the killing intent in Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei's eyes. He still imitated Xiao Mantian's cold tone and said lightly. The chubby face, the eyes that flickered with a cold light, the slightly raised head, the calm and callous expression. Wan Yishui was dumbstruck, his heart trembling. Could it be that this damn fatty had gone crazy? He is the direct descendant of the Shao clan of the Star River King. Back to Kunming. I owe everyone 20 credits in total. There are only a few days left in this month, so I can't pay it off. I'll try to pay it off next month. Chapter 1299. You're courting death. You think you can compete with us? Who do you think you are in front of Brother Tian? Feng Hanwei was unable to restrain her anger, and her reaction was even more intense than Xiao Mantian's. In fact, although she was Xiao Mantian's closest Dao companion, her words and actions always revolved around Xiao Mantian, and Xiao Mantian was her sky. After the restriction of the celestial light disappears, kneel in front of me and admit your mistake, and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, I'll kill you without mercy. Xiao Mantian looked at Fatty coldly for a few seconds before he said proudly, "No one dares to provoke me. Don't be so naive to think that I'll care about your dean. Even if you were a top academy, our Xiao family wouldn't care about you." Feng Hanwei said. TSK. I'm so scared. Do you really think I'm easy to bully? Buzz. Fatty's aura, which he had been restraining, suddenly burst out with his words. His fat, harmless face released an extremely cold aura at this moment. What made Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei's expressions change slightly was that the celestial light binding Fatty actually fluctuated slightly. How could this be? Even Xiao Mantian's aura could not cause any fluctuations under the restriction of the celestial light of a true celestial king, but this ordinary-looking Fatty could. Damn Fatty, shut up. Wan Yishui, who was in shock, suddenly interrupted Chen Hao and said, "He's an outsider who has just arrived at the celestial realm. He doesn't know his place. Brother Xiao, Sister Feng, please don't lower yourself to his level. Please don't worry, we'll do our best to help you. If we really drag you down, you don't have to care about our lives. After all, this mission is very valuable, and it's very important to the Academy and to us. We should work together to complete the mission. When the time comes, you'll also get a huge reward." Wan Yishui was very clear that she could not let Fatty fall out with the two of them. Although she hated Fatty, he was still the top student of the Academy of Dahua. He was also a genius that the dean and the pavilion master wanted to nurture. The Academy had treated her well, so how could she let things go on like this? That Fatty probably didn't even know how he died. She didn't think that the Fatty could defeat Xiao Mantian's Dao companion, who was a direct descendant of the Shao family of the Star River King, a top expert on the same level as Daoyuo Jingxian. At the same time, the moment Wan Yishui started to speak, he completely released the aura of his green silk jade ripple technique. She knew very well that if she wanted to bury the hatchet, she had to display a strength that could make the other party think highly of her. At the same time, she had to make the other party believe that she had the ability to assist them and increase their combat strength. Furthermore, the Azure Strand's Emerald Ripple technique was not a form of coercion and was not restricted by the immortal light. It was just nice for the other party to feel it. Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei also revealed a slightly astonished expression, and immediately became slightly intoxicated. However, it was only for an instant, and the two of them woke up from the concept of the Azure Silk Jade Ripple technique. "Are you done?" Xiao Mantian's eyes flashed with a trace of heat. For the first time, he looked at Wan Yishui and asked faintly. "I'm done. Brother Xiao, please be magnanimous, for the sake of completing the mission, for the sake of the Academy." Wan Yishui had to lower her head. There was no other way. This world was a world where the strong were respected. Just based on the strength of the two of them, Wan Yishui had to lower her head. Furthermore, Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei also had a status that their academy couldn't afford to offend. At this time, the Fatty only stared at Wan Yishui and didn't say anything. However, the aura released from his body was no longer concealed. Magnanimous? No one dares to provoke me, Xiao Mantian. If you want to let him go, you have to serve me well. If I'm satisfied, I can spare his life. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Xiao Mantian stared at Wan Yishui, who wasn't as pretty as Feng Hanwei, but was more pleasing to the eye. The originally undetectable heat in his eyes became obvious. Even Chen Hao and Feng Hanwei could clearly feel Xiao Mantian's evil intentions, not to mention Wan Yishui who was being stared at. Wan Yishui's face instantly turned red, and a trace of anger appeared on her face. She couldn't say anything else. What, you're not willing? Brother Tian letting you serve him is your 100 lifetimes worth of good fortune. So many people offered themselves to Brother Tian, but Brother Tian didn't agree. It's just a primordial yin body, the benefits you can obtain will be 100, 1,000 times greater. Xiao Mantian's partner Feng Hanwei actually said. Chen Hao, who wanted to see Wan Yishui's performance, was completely defeated by Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei's shamelessness and lowliness. Other than disdain in his heart, there was only disdain. Even though he knew that a crooked stick would have a crooked shadow, he didn't expect that a random direct descendant of the Xiao family would be so crooked. Are you done? Seeing Wan Yishui's face turn green and white, the fatty finally opened his mouth again. The same tone, the same arrogance, the same arrogance, the same arrogance, and the same arrogance as he spoke to Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei with his nostrils. Wan Yishui heard the fatty speak and wanted to stop him, but was stopped by the fatty's sharp gaze. Ha ha ha. Xiao Mantian frowned again, and laughed out of anger. Xiao Mantian, have never seen such a reckless thing like you. Even the heavens won't be able to save you. Idiot. Feng Hanwei also said sternly to the fatty. She looked like she couldn't wait to crush the fatty to death. Ha ha ha. Chen Hao suddenly laughed out loud. Lord Fatty, have also never seen such an arrogant and reckless slut like you. Later, kneel in front of me, kowtow and admit your mistakes. Also, if you serve Lord Fatty to my satisfaction, I can spare your dog lives. Oh, no, a slut like you, a slut, who knows, maybe 1,000 people will sleep with, 10,000 people will press down on you. Lord Fatty feels dirty, forget it, you only need to kowtow and lick my feet clean. Pay. As the fatty spoke, he spat a mouthful of saliva on his shoes. It had to be said that looking at Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei, who were obviously fuming with anger, Wan Yishui felt very relieved. At the same time, she had a new understanding of the fatty's shamelessness, arrogance, and supercilious. This was really a guy who was not afraid of anything, as if he didn't consider the consequences at all. Although the fatty was strong, could he really be stronger than Xiao Mantian and his wife who were already famous? Taking a step back, even if the fatty was really stronger than the two of them, who would dare to touch them with their identity? They were the direct descendants of the Xiao family, the #1 power in the great world of CND. Although she felt relieved, Wan Yishui knew that the fatty would be in big trouble this time, and she would not be able to escape. You are dead. Brother Tian, death is too easy for him. I want to cut him into pieces and refine his soul. Otherwise, I won't be satisfied. Okay, then I'll leave it to you. I'll deal with her. The two of them said coldly. Their tone was as if the fatty and Wan Yishui had become their meal. Still 019. That's all for today. Chapter 1300. Wan Yishui's delicate body trembled slightly. She knew that at this point, there was no way out. Moreover, she and the fatty were destined to be grasshoppers on the same boat. It was impossible for her to escape alone. No matter what, Wan Yishui did not expect such an outcome. She thought that this academy mission was a rare opportunity for her, but she did not expect such a thing to happen before the mission had even begun. Strange fatty. There was no need for that. Although the fatty was indeed a little impulsive, the main reason was that Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei had gone too far. Moreover, Wan Yishui knew that even without the current conflict, she would not be able to escape from the evil claws of Xiao Mantian, who had evil thoughts about her, in the future cooperation. Buzz. After thinking for a moment, Wan Yishui suddenly enveloped the fatty with the aura of the blue wave green silk technique. The fatty was slightly taken aback, but soon understood Wan Yishui's meaning. After smiling slightly, he directly closed his eyes. At the same time, his face was brimming with a comfortable expression as he immersed himself in Wan Yishue's blue wave green silk illusion. Damn fatty, we're in deep trouble because of you. Don't talk. The moment the immortal light disappears, use all your strength to activate the great teleportation technique and take me away. I'll activate the blue wave green silk illusion with all my strength. It should be able to make them temporarily lose their minds. This may be our only chance to escape. I know you're very strong, but I'm afraid you don't understand how strong the Star River King Xiao family is. Similarly, you don't understand the true strength of Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei. If we lose, we'll die. If we win, we'll still die. We can only escape temporarily. After the mission is over, let the Dean resolve it, and we'll be truly free. Sure enough, as Chen Hao expected, just as he entered the illusion, Wan Yishue's voice sounded in his mind. Under the restriction of the immortal light, the two could not communicate telepathically. However, Wan Yishue could rely on the mystery of the blue wave green silk technique to communicate directly in the illusion. Boom! Chi 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 chi. Suddenly, just as Chen Hao was about to reply to Wan Yishue, the immortal light that was binding the four of them quickly shuttled through the void. What's going on? Chen Hao and Wan Yishue both looked at the void in shock. Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei also looked at the sky. However, they didn't show too much surprise. It was as if everything was within their expectations. A faint shadow with a weak aura slowly emerged from the immortal light and took shape. Who else could it be but Dean Qing Wanxiang? The two of you are indeed the elites of the Xiao clan. You can't even hide from this insignificant divine sense of the old man. Alright, since that's the case, the old man won't monitor you. However, I hope that the four of you don't fight amongst yourselves, and working together to complete the mission is the most important. After all, the intensity of the competition this time has exceeded old man's imagination. Even though Qing Wanxiang was an expert at the true immortal king realm, the image condensed from a strand of his divine sense was extremely weak, and it was utterly unable to pose a threat to Xiao Mantian and the others. Of course, this was necessary. Firstly, it was impossible to pass through the aura restriction of the secret realm if it was too strong. Secondly, none of the competing forces would allow anyone to sneak in with a powerful divine sense to help their disciples. Qing Wanxiang had used this strand of his divine sense to sneak in with the four of them, and he was only monitoring their situation. Dean Cheng, I've said before that I don't want any monitoring when I'm on a mission. Even though I'm forcing your strand of divine sense to appear, what happened just now is real. It's impossible for us to work together. Wan Yishue can follow us, but tell the fatty to get lost. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Xiao Mantian said proudly. So this guy already guessed that the Dean would be monitoring us with his divine sense. Chen Hao was slightly taken aback. There was a trace of imperceptible surprise in his eyes as he looked at Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei. Under normal circumstances, there weren't many arrogant geniuses that Chen Hao encountered who had brains or liked to use their brains. They were all overly confident and relied on their own strength. However, from Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei's expressions, it was obvious that the previous conflict had been deliberately orchestrated by them. There was only one goal, and that was to force Qing Wanxiang to appear. Dean, I'll work with the fatty. Let's split up with them, Wan Yishue said hurriedly without hesitation. Just as Xiao Mantian had said, everything that had happened just now was real. How could Wan Yishue forget Xiao Mantian's burning gaze that was obviously filled with evil intentions towards him? What a joke! Do you think I'm afraid of you? If you want to get lost, then get lost. Otherwise. Fatty. Qing Wanxiang stopped Chen Hao and said, I originally wanted you to work together, and you should have been able to cooperate very well. Old man shouldn't have sent his strand of divine sense here. Don't say anything for now. While old man can still control the divine light, I'll split you into two groups and act separately. I hope you won't have any more conflicts in the secret realm. Everything can wait until the mission is over. Buzz. 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 Following Qing Wanxiang's words, the celestial light split into two. In the blink of an eye, the direction of the celestial light also changed. Fatty, remember, there's always someone better than you out there. If what you said before about not holding back is true, then you're definitely no match for Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei. Any one of them can defeat you. Both of them are almost invincible grand heavenly immortals, and they're even stronger when they work together. The aura you sensed is just that they've restrained a lot of their auras. Or rather, it might just be their lives. Buzz. Chen Hao, who was flying like a stream of light, was shocked as he thought about what Qin Wanxiang had said to him through voice transmission. There's always someone better than you out there. As a person, you really have to think twice every day. While I think they're arrogant and condescending, don't they think the same of me? As for who's the real arrogant one, I'll only know after the battle. But this time, it seems that I've been too arrogant. Fatty thought to himself. Stepping into the great thousand worlds of the immortal emperors, entering a first-rate academy, becoming the valedictorian, winning countless praises, and being highly valued by the true martial pavilion and the great thousand worlds of the immortal emperors. Chen Hao's invincible belief and momentum had swelled abnormally, and he now despised the powerful geniuses of the great thousand worlds of the immortal emperors. But now, Qin Wanxiang's words sounded an alarm for Chen Hao. Blind, impulsive, the Xiao family, the direct descendant of the Xiao family of the Star River King, the famous foreign aide specially invited by the Dean, the top expert of the great world of CND, the Daluo Golden Wonderland. How can he be weak? I knew his identity, but I didn't even consider the 9 lives mystic technique. He hid his aura, but I thought he didn't. In other words, the aura he hid was enough to make me feel that he was very strong. He was very low-key, but he still gave me the impression of being high-profile. A self-deprecating smile appeared on Chen Hao's lips. All along, he had been low-key and still appeared high-profile to others. It couldn't be helped, his strength was too strong. But now, it was others' turn to face him, but he didn't know it himself. Today's update. Chapter 1301. The immortal light that bound Chen Hao and Wan Yishui's flight finally became weaker and slower. When it reached the time limit of 1 hour, it finally disappeared completely. Chen Hao, who had regained his freedom, stood up in the air, raised his head, and looked into the distance. He saw that the whole space was barren, with ravines crisscrossing the ground and collapsed mountains. A very clear aura of destruction bloomed from the ground, filling the whole space. If it were not for the clear ancient aura of death, one would think that a terrible natural disaster had just happened here. The energy between heaven and earth was extremely dense because of the collapse of the vast thousand domains, but it was much more chaotic than the primitive secret realm that Chen Hao had been to before. Most of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth still contained the will of destruction. Chen Hao took a deep breath, and the surrounding heaven and earth spirit qi immediately fluctuated along with his breathing. Directly swallow. Wan Yishui was slightly taken aback. Is there a problem? We were forcibly sent in by the true immortal king, and the destructive energy here is obviously still very dense. If we directly swallow it, it will be very troublesome, especially if we swallow too much, the destructive energy will gather more and more, and it is very likely that we will lose control. However, swallowing a little to comprehend the concept of destruction is not bad. Is that so? Nonsense. Do you think I would lie to you? Wan Yishui, who was destined to be with Chen Hao for a period of time, did not want the conflict between the two to affect the mission. For the sake of the overall situation, she took the initiative to speak to the fatty enthusiastically. However, the fatty repeatedly asked questions, looking at her with eyes full of disbelief, or perhaps disdain. I don't know. However, I don't feel anything wrong, and it seems very comfortable. Suck. Chen Hao said, and like a dragon sucking water, he activated his divine sense and opened his mouth to swallow. In an instant, the fluctuations of the surrounding energy of heaven and earth became even more intense. Wan Yishui shook her head, and said nothing more. She opened her mind, sensing the subtle changes in the aura between heaven and earth, and said, the core should be in this direction. Our mission is to obtain as many spiritual treasures of heaven and earth as possible, and we can't delay. My battle strength is not as good as yours, and I can only cooperate with you when I encounter a competitor. I hope you can let go of your prejudice, and we can cooperate well. After all, as long as we succeed, the benefits we can obtain will be huge, absolutely beyond our imagination. No problem. However, if we're talking about prejudices, aren't you the one who's prejudiced against me? I can no longer pursue the vulgar words you said to me before. Wang Yishui's face was slightly red as he frowned. She knew how precious this mission was, so she cherished this opportunity more than anyone else, even though her aptitude was relatively poor. She hoped to succeed. She hoped to obtain the final victory. That way, she would be able to obtain the commission of the entire Mystery Realm's profits. To her, this was extremely precious and needed. Therefore, no matter what, they had to give in to the shameless fatty and work together. What dirty words. I'm such a pure person. Do I look like someone who would talk dirty? You said earlier that you are inferior to me, fat bro. You are only assisting me. Therefore, the spiritual items of heaven and earth, legacy relics, and ancient magic treasures that we obtain together naturally have to be divided according to our contribution. I get 9%, you get 1%, no discussion. Is there a problem? Wang Yishui's mouth was crooked from anger. How could there be such a shameless and ungentlemanly man? You don't agree? Then let's split up and do our own things. Goodbye. Wait, I agree. Wang Yishui coughed up blood and surrendered. There were more than 3,000 forces and close to 10,000 competitors. Although her strength was definitely at the top among the 10,000 people, how could she fight against other people's teams alone? Perhaps in the early stages, but as she got closer to the core, she was afraid that she would become someone else's meal. You agree to this? Chen Hao's figure froze, and he turned to look at Wang Yishui in surprise. The reason he was so shameless was because he didn't want to be alone with Wang Yishui all day long. There was no other way. Although he had become a fatty and wasn't handsome in the slightest, if a woman really came into contact with him, she would still be affected by his luck with women. Of course, Chen Hao didn't intend to let Wang Yishui fend for herself. That wasn't his style. One more condition. Try your best to use the Azure Silk Jade Ripple technique on me, such as now. Okay. Wang Yishui gritted her teeth. Wang. After speaking, she directly used the highest level of the Azure Silk Jade Ripple technique on Chen Hao. She really wanted to know whether the fatty wouldn't be charmed by her at the highest level of her emotions. So obedient, so comfortable. Let's go. What disappointed Wang Yishui was that the fatty only revealed a comfortable and intoxicated expression. His small eyes were as clear as before. With a step, he relied on his sharp soul perception to head in the direction of the denser energy of heaven and earth. This mission, no matter what, I have to take it. Improve my strength. Improve my Daluo Golden Wonderland to perfection. On the surface, Chen Hao didn't seem to be affected by Xiao Mantian and his wife. He was still teasing Wang Yishui, but as he flew, his fighting spirit rose. After relaxing for a period of time, his nerves were once again in a tense state. Too slow. 2 days later, Chen Hao looked at Wang Yishui, who was chasing behind him with a red face and constantly widening the distance between them. He suddenly waved his hand, and an energy wrapped around Wang Yishui. Wang! In an instant, Wang Yishui felt as if the void was being torn apart, and the surrounding space had a strong change. Learn. Half a year in the outside world is probably a few decades, or even 100 years here. With your speed, you are delaying too much. Now, I will demonstrate the profound meaning of the great teleportation technique to you. Carefully comprehend it, don't worry about anything else. The fatty's voice resounded in Wang Yishui's mind, causing her to be a little stunned. Is this despicable, shameless, lowly, petty, and ungentlemanly fatty's brain cramping? Imparting the great teleportation technique to me? Wani Shui simply couldn't believe it. But at this moment, she could clearly sense the profound aura of the fatty when he used the great teleportation technique. It was very obvious that the fatty had deliberately slowed down to demonstrate for her to comprehend. It was also at this moment that the mantra of the great teleportation technique also floated into Wani Shui's mind. After Wani Shui confirmed that she wasn't dreaming, she directly immersed herself in comprehending and cultivating. What's wrong, Brother Tian? Their speed suddenly increased by several times. Several times? Brother Tian, did you sense it wrongly? Wasn't their speed just now half of ours? If it's several times, then they have already surpassed our speed. In another direction, Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei were shuttling through the void as fast as lightning. Chen Hao, Wani Shui, and even Qin Wanxiang didn't expect or sense that Xiao Mantian had actually left a mark on Wani Shui's body. Damn, I uploaded it yesterday, but forgot to post it. I just saw it. I'm really sorry. Chapter 1302. It's the great teleportation technique. I didn't expect that fatty to have cultivated the great teleportation technique to such a level. Xiao Mantian closed his eyes, and a mysterious aura fluctuated between his eyebrows. After carefully sensing for 2 minutes, he suddenly opened his eyes. Ah! Brother Tian, what should we do? If that's the case, we won't be able to catch up. Don't worry, they won't be moving forward all the time. When they encounter something unusual, they will naturally stop. But, we have to speed up so that we won't be delayed for too long. Buzz. Alright. Buzz. The space between Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei's brows suddenly emitted dense energy, and shortly after, their auras suddenly rose by more than twofold. In an instant, their flying speed doubled as well. If Chen Hao and Si Xian were here, they would definitely be able to sense that the aura released by the two of them was the aura of the 9 lives profound technique. The reason why the two of them were so concerned about the fatty and Wani Shui was that the fatty had indeed angered the two of them previously. For cultivators, especially cultivators like them, any flaw in their hearts could become a restriction on their martial path. How could they let the fatty go? Secondly, Xiao Mantian was very interested in Wani Shui, especially her green jade ripple technique and her primordial yin body. Although they had only felt it for a moment, the refreshing feeling, as if their souls had been cleansed, left Xiao Mantian and Si Xian wanting more. If they could obtain Wani Shui's primordial yin body, they would be able to obtain the true essence of the green jade ripple technique through the fusion of yin and yang in a short period of time. More importantly, even if he couldn't comprehend it, he still had his cultivation partner, Feng Hanwei. No one knew how terrifying Feng Hanwei was. What a strong fluctuation. Could it be an ore vein? Moreover, it should be an ore vein that contains boundless spiritual qi of heaven and earth. It's very likely to be a pure celestial core crystal or vein. In the vast and boundless secret realm, Chen Hao and the others were separated by the immortal light at the beginning. But in this vast secret realm, they were still in the same area. It was just that they had to fly for several days or even dozens of days before they could meet. They were all moving forward by relying on their own perception of the aura of the secret realm. Naturally, they were all moving towards the core of the secret realm. Under such circumstances, the distance between them was bound to get closer and closer as they gathered towards the core. This was something that everyone understood. And now, many cultivators had sensed the sudden increase in the spirit qi of heaven and earth. Experienced cultivators could instantly make a rough judgment. Quick! Such a powerful aura must have covered a huge area. He believed that many other cultivators would have sensed it as well. Time was wealth. First come first serve. Charge! Charge! Qi! Qi! A group of 4 with powerful auras suddenly increased their speed to the maximum. At the same time, the cultivators in the other dozens of places also went all out. To cultivators, the primitive secret realm was a huge treasure trove. Moreover, it was a treasure trove that was basically harmless. Of course, this referred to the primitive secret realm itself. most of the danger came from competitors. Just as these teams were using all their strength to get closer and it would take them at least a few days or more to get there, two figures flashed in the void, as if they were crossing the void, and finally stopped. Fuck. Both the fatty and Wani Shui were stunned by the endless immortal light that was emitting from their bodies. Their aura alone had condensed into numerous dragon-shaped shadows that shot straight to the sky. It was a huge, sparkling mountain with a radius of 10,000 miles. It was a huge mountain that was purely made up of pieces of immortal core crystals. On the top of the mountain and in the surroundings was an expanse of disorder. Broken walls and ravines crisscrossed the surroundings. Needless to say, both of them knew that this was once an extremely wealthy sect, whereas this mountain of immortal origin crystals that lay across an area of 5,000 kilometers before them was undoubtedly a former storehouse. Unfortunately, the storehouse had collapsed, causing the boundless immortal origin crystals to be exposed. Immortal core crystals, so many immortal core crystals, my. Wani Shui was so excited that he stuttered. Fuck, are you stupid? Hurry up and keep it. I'll give you 9, and you'll give me 1. Don't take too much. Swish. Chen Hao waved his hand, and numerous powerful runes floated out. In an instant, the wind swept away the clouds, and the endless immortal core crystals turned into long dragons that surged toward the space between Chen Hao's eyebrows. Can we take it? Can you take 1% or 1,000th of it? I'll give you 9, and I'll give you 1. Wani Shui was completely speechless by the fatty's words. Moreover, the moment Wani Shui recovered from his shock, he knew that many cultivators must have been here. They should be the disciples sent in by the experts who had discovered the secret realm in advance. However, no one could take away many of them, and perhaps only a hair from 9 oxen could be taken away. Cough. Wani Shui's words made Chen Hao cough awkwardly. He had actually forgotten that they were only in the Daluo Golden Wonderland. Although the Daluo Golden Wonderland already had a mental space, and the stronger the cultivator's strength, the larger the mental space would be, it was ultimately not the mental world of the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. Not everyone was as perverted as him. Fill it up, just fill it up. If you run out in the future, I can give you some more. However, you can just pretend that you didn't see the rest. As the fatty spoke, he did not stop collecting immortal core crystals at all. Moreover, as he spoke, what surprised Wani Shui was that the fatty's body was still rapidly growing. In just a short sentence, he had already become more than 10,000 feet tall. The way he collected immortal core crystals was like a monster that could devour the heavens and the earth. For a moment, Wani Shui even forgot to collect. He stared at the fatty in shock, feeling like he was an ant in front of him. Absorb. Buzz. Absorb. Buzz. The fatty frantically collected immortal core crystals. Wani Shui finally understood why the fatty emphasized 9, 1 and why he told him to pretend that he did not see it. What kind of monster was this damn fatty? Was he still human? Not to mention the Daluo Golden Wonderland, even the Supreme of Hongmeng, who had a mental world, might not be able to store so many immortal core crystals. Fatty, That, I'll help you collect them. Is it an obligation or a fee? If it's an obligation, it's fine. Wani Shui resisted the urge to vomit blood and said, an obligation. But after we get out, you have to give me 1/10. 1% is fine too. Give it to me. What 1/10, 100th? You're treating me like an outsider. Who are we? Just collect as much as you can, no need to be polite. Damn fatty, can you not be so shameless? If I'm not wrong, the experts who came in with us will be here soon. That's true. Come on my shoulder. If you collect it, 1/10 is yours. I'll store it for you. Okay. He was obviously being treated as a coolie, but Wani Shui agreed readily. In his opinion, it was already not easy for the stingy fatty to give such a condition. Chapter 1303. How could Wani Shui not agree? This feeling was like the iron whip that had been used to whip him had now been replaced with a slap. His psychological bottom line had been raised by the shameless fatty. The current conditions were still very unfair, but Wan Yishui already felt that it was very, very good. At least, without the limitation of storage space, the 1/10 she collected would be many times more than her own. Absorb. Wan Yishui stood on the shoulder of the fatty who had turned into a towering giant. Like a dancing butterfly, she used all her skills to absorb the immortal core crystals at the fastest speed and sent them to Qinhao's glabella. She didn't know why the fatty's mind space was so abnormal. Although she was very curious, she didn't ask. Even if she asked, she wouldn't have an answer. But she had a new understanding of the fatty's abnormality. This was an unfathomable guy who couldn't be seen through at all. Swoosh. For days later, a stream of light flashed above the void and advanced at a terrifying speed. Anyone who saw it could be sure that this stream of light was using the 3000 Great Tao's lost art, the Great Teleportation Technique. At this moment, Wan Yishui was wrapped in the fatty's energy. Although it had been an hour since they left the mountain of immortal core crystals, her beautiful face still had a faint blush because of excitement. 4 days. In merely 4 days' time, they had actually uprooted the enormous mountain of immortal essence crystals, and absorbed them all into the fatty's abnormal, bottomless space in his mind. Not even the dregs of the immortal essence crystals were left. They had collected them all. Fatty, you're really amazing. This time, we've made a big fortune. Wan Yishui couldn't suppress the excitement in her heart. It's just a little bit of immortal core crystals. What's there to be excited about? The fatty's face was obviously blooming with excitement, but he said it pretentiously. A little bit? It's 1/10 of what I collected. If it's just for cultivation, I won't be able to use it all in my lifetime. And for this mission, with these immortal core crystals, I'm afraid we'll be in an invincible position. It doesn't matter if your name is water, but don't have an empty head. What empty head? Only water enters when it's empty. You, whose head is filled with water? Could it be me, fat bro? Firstly, I said that you should act as if you didn't see it. I don't want to expose the abnormality in the space in my mind. Secondly, if other people were to find out about such a huge amount of immortal origin crystals, including the Dean, do you think they would really let us monopolize it? Thirdly, you discovered this immortal elemental crystal mountain the moment you entered. Do you think you can be called a king in the primal mystic domain with just this bit of wealth? I was just saying. I didn't say that I would expose it. Cut the crap. Concentrate your mind and continue comprehending. I'll give you a year at most. I don't want to bring a burden along all the time. Wan Yishui's face suddenly turned red, but she didn't dare to refute, nor was she in the mood to refute. Fatty taught her the great teleportation technique and demonstrated it to her all the time. How could she refute? He could only be grateful. Furthermore, after interacting with him for the past few days, she realized that Fatty was only shameless with his words. In other words, his mouth was cheap, but his heart wasn't bad. Furthermore, Wan Yishui also realized that Fatty, who looked lewd and despicable, wasn't at all. Otherwise, even if Fatty didn't dare to mess around in the primal mystic domain with her, he would more or less show some of what he should have. However, he didn't. Even when he brought her along to fly, he used his energy to bind her, and not the simplest, most convenient and fastest way of holding hands. It disappeared. Someone must have beaten us to it. How could such a strong wave of energy disappear so quickly? There's no point in saying more. Let's hurry up and see what's going on. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. After Qinhao and Wan Yishui collected all the immortal elemental crystals and left, none of the cultivators who had sensed the wave of energy from the immortal elemental crystal mountain had arrived. They didn't even know who had beaten them to it. However, Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei, who had locked onto Qinhao and Wan Yishui, sensed something. When Qinhao and Wan Yishui stopped moving forward, they sensed it. When they madly approached and sensed the strong energy wave of the heavens and earth, they guessed that Qinhao and Wan Yishui had stopped moving forward because of the energy wave. Not long after the energy wave gradually weakened and disappeared completely, Chen Hao and Wan Yishui suddenly moved forward again. They had sensed it as well. Therefore, others didn't know, but Xiao Mantian was sure that Chen Hao and Wan Yishui had definitely benefited from it. However, Xiao Mantian didn't know what Chen Hao and Wan Yishui had obtained for the time being. 2 days later, when some cultivators arrived successively, and they saw the broken walls, collapsed palaces, and other traces left behind by the ancient sects, and the aura left behind by the immortal essence crystal mountain that covered an area of 5,000 kilometers, everyone stared their eyes wide open with astonishment. Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei were even more shocked. The distance from here when they sensed the aura, the strength of the aura they sensed at that time, and the location of the aura left behind now allowed Xiao Mantian and the others to determine what this space was used for. They could also deduce that there must be a large amount of immortal elemental crystals stored here. But now, there wasn't even a single immortal elemental crystal left. The number of immortal elemental crystals that Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei had determined made the two of them believe that the Fatty and Wan Yishui had obtained all of them. In their opinion, there should still be many cultivators here. It seems that many cultivators have already snuck in before us. This battle has become even more interesting. Let's go, the mark I left on Wan Yishui can only last for 2 months at most. We have to catch up to the two of them as soon as possible. 2 months? Brother Tian, isn't your tracking mark able to last for several years? That's in the great world of CND. The destructive aura here is too strong. Even if my mark contains the immortal will, it can't last for long. 2 months is my limit. Oh. Then let's go quickly. Let's work together. Okay. In the chaotic space outside the secret realm, dozens of elders with powerful auras were gathered in the middle by thousands of elders with equally powerful auras. Everyone's eyes were filled with anticipation as they stared at the elder who was sitting cross-legged in the middle and continuously forming seals with his hands that emitted powerful space-time mysteries. After a full 10 minutes, the old man stopped with a slightly pale face. Elder Lu, did you deduce it? One of the dozens of elders with powerful auras asked. A very strong space-time law. Old man is unable to deduce the specifics. Even with the old man's understanding of the space-time law, he is unable to do it. However, I have already reached my limit. This means that the space-time law in the primitive secret realm is at least 1,000 times stronger than in the great world of CND. What? Chapter 1304. How is this possible? Elder Lu, the great world of CND is already the most powerful vast world. How can the primitive mystic realm have such powerful spacetime laws? I'm not sure about that. However, in my opinion, this isn't the real primitive mystic region. In other words, this isn't formed after the collapse of the Great Thousand World. Instead, it's... The person who was addressed as Elder Lu paused for a moment before he looked at the crowd. Instead, what? It's related to the Emperor Stars. The Emperor Stars. Everyone was stunned. In the chaotic space, this is the intersection of the 5 main stars. It's also a flight path. However, for hundreds of millions of years, no one has discovered its existence. Now, the Emperor Stars have just appeared, and we've discovered it. This is too much of a coincidence. That's one of the reasons. Secondly, old man can feel that although the space is filled with an endless amount of destructive aura, the space-time laws are very stable. It's as if the destructive aura is fused with the space-time laws. Elder Lu's words made everyone reveal a shocked and thoughtful expression. It's man-made. If the destructive aura is fused with the space-time profundity, there's only one explanation. This is a man-made primitive mystic realm. Otherwise, the destructive aura will definitely oppose any law in the primal mystic realm. This old man is not trying to scare you, but this mystic realm is very likely to have been created by a celestial emperor for his own awakening, and now, all the disciples you sent in are very likely to become his stepping stones. Ah! Elder Lu's words shocked everyone. Elder Lu was one of the top experts in the great world of CND who had the highest comprehension of the spacetime laws. He had appeared here because he had been invited by the leaders of the various forces to deduce the spacetime laws in the primitive mystic realm and deduce its value. There was no other way. No one present could simulate the same situation as the spacetime laws in the primitive mystic realm. It was not possible even if they worked together. This was related to the highest level of comprehension. Therefore, if you don't want anything to happen to your disciples, it's best to call them back as soon as possible. Call them back. Elder Lu, that's impossible. When we entered, we worked together to set an automatic activation time on their tokens. We can't change it even if we want to, then we can only refine the command medallion and send someone to deliver it to them. Elder Lu frowned and said, of course, this is only old man's speculation. As for the specifics, even I cannot predict it. It all depends on your decision. Elder Lu, thank you. At this moment, the dean of the top academy, Hogu Academy, cupped his fists and said to Elder Lu. Then, he looked at the crowd and said, I hope Elder Lu doesn't mind. This is only a secret realm that the Celestial Emperor created for himself. In my opinion, even if Elder Lu's speculation is correct, the person inside this secret realm can only be the reincarnation of the Celestial Emperor. Moreover, it must be the awakening of the Daluo Golden Wonderland. It's hard to say who will become whose stepping stone. The dean of Hogu Academy was very confident in his disciple. Even he couldn't see through the strength of Ding Hao, the young master of saber and sword. It was not an exaggeration to say that Ding Hao was invincible. So what if he was the reincarnation of an immortal emperor? Moreover, he already knew that the young master of saber and sword was hiding an even bigger secret. Of course, it's up to you whether to call your disciple out or not. However, if you decide to do so, it's equivalent to giving up the competition for this secret realm. I believe that no one has any objections to this, right? Of course not. No matter what you do, since our Cloud Sea Academy has participated, there's no reason for us to withdraw. We're determined to win this secret realm. There's no turning back. Our Dark North Academy won't withdraw. Our Dahua Academy won't withdraw either. Cheng Wanxiang said with great certainty. He was also not worried. After a while, the result came out. Unexpectedly, no one announced their withdrawal. On the contrary, some powerful forces were looking forward to it. Because if this secret realm was really as Elder Lu had speculated, it must contain the lifetime savings of an celestial emperor. What did that mean? Ha 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 ha! Suddenly, a loud laugh tore through the sky without any warning, and it directly resounded in the ears of everyone present. It was as if it was right by their ears, and it caused everyone present to be astounded. Who could be so powerful? This was a chaotic space. Even if it was the most peaceful area, the spatial storms never stopped for a moment. However, this voice was actually able to appear by everyone's ears, yet they couldn't sense the slightest bit of the person's aura. After all, the people present here and especially the few tens of people at the core were all true immortal kings. How lively! I heard that a primitive secret realm of the Daluo Golden Wonderland has appeared here. The old man came uninvited. Everyone, please don't blame him. Ha ha ha. Space suddenly shook, and a dazzling spatial door actually directly appeared in the chaotic space. An old man walked out with a young man and woman. Everyone was shocked when they saw the old man. At the same time, they felt relieved in their hearts. No wonder he was so strong. When everyone saw the young man and woman on the left and right of the old man, their eyes lit up. The young man was delicate and handsome, and the young woman was extraordinarily beautiful. Just based on their appearance, they looked to be at most 17 or 18 years old. However, the natural aura that they emitted clearly told everyone present that they were at the consummate level of the Daluo Golden Wonderland. Senior Sword King, you must be joking. You being able to come is the glory of all of us. How could we dare to blame you? The dean of the Hogu Academy felt that his status was the highest, so he took a step forward and respectfully cupped his fists to the newcomer. What did you say? However, to everyone's surprise, when the newcomer heard the dean of the Hogu Academy's words, his expression actually changed. In an instant, his entire body seemed to have transformed into a peerless sword that existed eternally in the world. He emitted an extremely terrifying pressure, and even the true immortal kings present felt terrified. Strong. Absolutely strong. Senior Sword King, shut up. Old man once said that no one is allowed to call me Sword King. If you want to call me that, do it after I defeated Sword King Duguchyo. Senior. Sword King Duguchyo disappeared millions of years ago. The current Sword King is none other than you. Moreover, in this one's opinion, your strength has definitely surpassed Sword King Duguchyo's. Ha ha ha. That's right. Old man's strength has indeed surpassed Duguchyo's, but it has surpassed the former Duguchyo. Now, who will win and who will lose will only be known after the battle. When the elder said this, he suddenly looked at the endless void. The sharp sword will around him shot up into the sky, as if the sky was about to be pierced through. His gaze seemed to pierce through the endless Milky Way and saw his opponent. Chi. However, in just an instant, the old man's aura suddenly disappeared as if nothing had happened. He looked at everyone again and said, "Old man came here to let my 2 disciples go in and gain experience. Don't worry, I won't participate in your competition. Is that all right?" Chapter 1305. Could there be a problem? If there was a problem, it could only become no problem. The great world of Xiendi recognized the new generation of Sword King Chintaishu, second only to the Star River King, King Ying, and the other 8 true immortal kings from hundreds of millions of years ago. Who dared to have an opinion? In this world where strength was respected, strength was everything. Not to mention rules and laws, they were just shackles that restricted the weak. At Chintaishu's level, it could be said that as long as he did not go against the top Celestial River King, Prince Ying, and the others, he could completely ignore the rules. Moreover, the people present only felt a sense of helplessness when they felt the heavenly sword intent. His strength was not much worse than that of the Sword King, one of the 8 true immortal kings from hundreds of millions of years ago. It was even possible that he was stronger. Who dared to have an opinion? Of course. Everyone responded. That's good. Qin Yang, Miao Xian, after you go in, don't attack if you don't attack me. Understand? Yes, master. Qi. The Sword King, Chintaishu, casually formed a sword with his finger and lightly slashed at the void in front of him. Immediately, the space was soundlessly cut open. The Sword King only needed to lightly point at the barrier that took more than 3,000 people to forcefully open. Of course, the Sword King only opened a small gap. Otherwise, it would be too terrifying. Go. Yes, master. The young man and woman called Qin Yang and Miao Xian suddenly shone brilliantly, as if they had turned into 2 swords, and disappeared in a flash. The aura that bloomed in an instant also shocked the masters present. They all prayed that their disciples would not have a conflict with these 2 people. More than 2,000 times the space-time law. The Sword King, Chintaishu, looked surprised when he saw his 2 disciples disappear into the crack. The crack he opened with his sword finger instantly healed. How can it be so strong? Even the old man could not detect it. However, it annihilated the old man's sword intent so quickly. I'm afraid it's close to 3,000 times. When Elder Lu and the others heard the Sword King's words, they all widened their eyes in horror. Very good. Very good. The Imperial Star is not bad. It's within my expectations, but it's also outside of my expectations. Ha, nothing is destined in this world. That's what makes it interesting. Unfortunately, this is the era of the young. Sword King seemed to be mumbling to himself. Then, he disappeared without a trace, as if he had never been there. Senior brother, farewell. Within the secret realm, the beautiful young lady Miao Xian said to the young man Qin Yang as soon as she entered. All right, junior sister. Be careful. Since master has deduced it, you must take it seriously. Senior brother, don't worry about it. You have to know that Master also said that nothing is predestined. What's more, when has Master's deduction ever come true? That's because you successfully changed your fate. Master also said that you might not be able to defy the heavens and succeed every time. Furthermore, he also emphasized that this will be the first great calamity in your life. I don't care if it's a tribulation or not. I just want to know who is destined to be my destined one. The young girl Miao Xian smiled indifferently. Then, she turned into a stream of light with a swoosh. It was impossible to tell whether she was a person or a sword. There was only an astonishing speed. Qin Yang smiled bitterly and shook his head. He was helpless in the face of his stubborn and arrogant junior sister. Even Master didn't dare to say that he could transcend fate, let alone junior sister. What was heaven's secret? What was destiny? If it was deduced and changed fate didn't happen, did it really mean that it was a success? Perhaps, when you deduced and thought that you had successfully changed your fate, that would be your fate. Fate was unpredictable. Before reaching the immortal emperor realm, no one dared to say that they had seen through fate. No one could say that they had transcended the river of fate. Within the primitive secret realm. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Swoosh! Swoosh! A figure flashed in the void at a terrifying speed like a bolt of lightning. Every time it flickered and appeared, there would be drops of bright red essence blood floating down from the void. It was a fat figure. I've been forced into such a situation. You two bitches, just you wait. As long as the space-time laws of this secret realm are strong enough, Qin Hao, we'll deal with you. The combination of two bitches, 9 in 1. The two of them can actually use the 9 lives mystic technique to such a level. It's unbelievable. The fat man ran while comprehending the Tao marks contained in the wounds on his body. At the same time, he thought about Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei's situation. Just as Qin Wanxiang had guessed, the current Qin Hao was utterly not a match for the joint forces of Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei. Moreover, no matter what, Qin Hao had never expected that the two bitches would meet so quickly even though they had clearly separated in two different directions under the wrapping of the immortal light. It was fine if they met, but they actually attacked. If the two of them hadn't underestimated Qin Hao and underestimated Qin Hao's strength, Qin Hao and Wan Yishui would have been in trouble. However, what Qin Hao and Wan Yishui did not expect was that not long after the two of them had escaped and stopped to heal their wounds, they were actually found again. After 3 consecutive times, Qin Hao and Wan Yishui confirmed one thing, and that was that the other party was able to lock onto one of them. The time they had to catch their breaths was only because they had an advantage in speed. In other words, the other party had simply followed their footsteps and directly chased after them, not spending any time to find them. As for Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei, they had actually cultivated the 9 lives profound technique to the pinnacle. Just this alone was already very shocking. What was even more shocking was that the two of them who had fused their 9 lives into one were actually able to create a new life after fusing their swords together and completely fusing it with their life. Who knew how many times their battle strength had increased? If not for this, the fat man wouldn't be in such a sorry state. It was the first time someone had forced Qin Hao to such a state in the same realm. Fortunately, the other party was 2 as 1. Otherwise, Qin Hao's invincible momentum that had been formed over many years would have been destroyed. How are you? After the fat man confirmed that he was out of danger, his mind merged with his mind and asked. I won't die yet. Fatty, thank you. If not for you, I might have already. What are you thanking me for? What kind of relationship do we have? If you say that again, I'll get angry with you. But, if you really feel bad, then the immortal essence crystals will all. Alright. Pfft. Fatty, put away your act. Aren't you purposely trying to disgust me? If you're afraid that I like you, you don't have to deliberately pretend. Besides, am I that annoying? Also, you're just a little more talented. Being so fat and ugly doesn't suit my aesthetic standards. What's more, you have a Tao companion. Fuck. Sister Shui, how can you be so hypocritical? The fat man couldn't take it anymore. Although he knew that Wani Shui had seen through his thoughts, but she couldn't say that he was fat and ugly, right? No way. I'm just speaking the truth. Ah. I'll heal first. Under the protection of Chen Hao, although Wani Shui's injuries were lighter, her endurance was a few streets below the fat man's. Chapter 1306. Due to Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei's pursuit, Chen Hao had no choice but to expose the space in his sea of consciousness. In order to save Wani Shui and save his own life, Chen Hao had exposed the space in his sea of consciousness, which was comparable to a Grand Mist Venerable Expert's sea of consciousness. Wani Shui was sure that the size of the fatty's mental space was much larger than the mental worlds of the Grand Mist Supremacy realm, and it had the ability to enter a living person's mental space. In fact, Wani Shui couldn't feel the difference between Chen Hao's mental space and the mental space of a great world, but Chen Hao was only in the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland, and the prototype of his great world hadn't taken shape yet, so it was impossible for him to have a mental world. After a short period of contact, Wani Shui's view of the fatty had changed greatly. At least, her disgust and hostility no longer existed. If it wasn't for the fatty, or if the fatty didn't help her with all his strength, she might have already been killed by Xiao Mantian. How could a person who didn't care about his own safety when his life was in serious danger and saved her, who wasn't even a friend to him, be a wretched and shameless person? Wani Shui didn't believe it. Moreover, he was obviously very lecherous on the surface, but in this period of contact, he didn't do anything improper to her at all. It was also because she saw through some things that Wani Shui said those words just now. The space-time law here should be very strong. Half a year in the outside world is at least 10 years here. Chen Hao slowly landed in a hidden valley and sat down cross-legged, thinking to himself. Unfortunately, he only had a superficial understanding of the space-time law and couldn't deduce the specific situation at all. He only felt that it was very strong. This feeling was like the feeling of an ant looking at a human and an elephant. There was no difference. I can't just complete the mission for the sake of completing it. Otherwise, in the end, I'm afraid it will still be a wedding dress for someone else. Experience. The dean also said that this is a rare opportunity for Wani Shui and me to gain experience. I'll cultivate here for a while. As long as the space-time law is strong enough, I'll trample on you. Chen Hao's eyes flashed with a sharp light, and he suddenly attacked. Chi 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 chi, mysterious runes spread out in all directions in an instant, as if they had merged with the world and disappeared in an instant. However, Chen Hao did not have the slightest intention of stopping. After an hour, his expression became a little ugly, and he finally stopped. Phew. With the protection of this barrier and the fact that Wani Shui is in my mind, they shouldn't be able to sense our location. Moreover, even if they chase after us, I will be able to discover them at the first moment. If we can't fight them, escaping won't be a problem. Chen Hao and Wani Shui had already checked their own bodies, but they did not find that their bodies had been tampered with. Of course, Chen Hao could not find it, he did not have it on his body at all. Now, Wani Shui had entered Chen Hao's mind space. Other people's mind space and even their mind world were fine, but Chen Hao's mind space could shield abilities that far exceeded his realm. This was all thanks to the old god's protection. It was also because of this that Xiao Mantian and his wife, who had been left far behind, were puzzled. Because Xiao Mantian's senses had already lost Wani Shui's aura, they had no choice but to give up the chase. There was no other way. In the vast and boundless space of the secret realm, it was already difficult to catch up to two people who were faster than them, not to mention that they had become headless flies. Of course, Chen Hao and Wani Shui did not know this. After informing Wani Shui, Chen Hao immersed himself in cultivation for the first time since stepping into the primitive secret realm. Moreover, he wanted to squeeze and force himself to cultivate. Buzz. The moment his mind and mind connected, Chen Hao's heart and mouth became one, and at the same time, an extremely mysterious and unfathomable general principle of the Great Tao sounded. Chi chi chi. In an instant, a large number of celestial origin crystals rose up and circled around him. They shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye and turned into pure spiritual chi of heaven and earth, which was absorbed and refined by Qin Hao. Refining his meridians, refining his dantian, refining every cell in his body, refining his mind space, everything was done at the same time. Under the threat and pressure of Xiao Montian's life and death, Qin Hao, whose state of mind had already become invincible, seemed to have returned to the time when he was suppressed to the point that he could not breathe. Once again, he started to squeeze himself to his limits. Boom! Boom boom boom. After the celestial origin crystals overflowed from Qin Hao's sea of consciousness, they could not even last for an hour before they exploded. However, not a single strand of energy could escape. Under the restraint of Qin Hao's powerful mind, they all fused into his body. As time passed, Qin Hao's fat body started to inflate like a balloon, becoming bigger and bigger. From time to time, a part of his body would explode, and blood and flesh would splatter everywhere. However, in an instant, it would be forcefully sealed by runes, and the expansion continued. However, this was only the most superficial situation. In Qin Hao's mind space, other than the pure land that was sealed for the all-purpose water, the entire mind space of Qin Hao had sunk into a terrifying energy storm. Countless immortal origin crystals exploded and filled the entire mind space. However, in an instant, they would mysteriously disappear. This made Qin Hao, who was immersed in a state of crazy cultivation, feel inexplicably surprised. He felt a little heartache for the consumption of immortal origin crystals, but more than that, he was excited. An uncontrollable excitement. After the nirvana of the true self, the old god had completely disappeared from Qin Hao's world. When he came to the great world of CND, Qin Hao's mind space no longer had any life. It was an empty and dead world, but now, a change had occurred. Qin Hao could clearly feel that everything originated from the deepest part of his mind space. Furthermore, a faint, weak, but real aura that belonged to the old god quietly grew in the depths of Qin Hao's mind space. Although it was very weak, it could not escape Qin Hao's perception. How could Qin Hao forget that familiar aura? As he grew up, step by step, without him, it could be said that there would be no Qin Hao today. Old god, Qin Hao's heart, which had been tempered to be as tough as iron, was uncontrollably excited and trembling at this moment. Even after the aura of the old god appeared, it was difficult to maintain the state of cultivation. If not for the fact that he was worried that stopping cultivation would affect the change in his mind, Qin Hao really wanted to stop and integrate himself into the faint and weak aura of the old god. Resisting the excitement in his heart, Qin Hao raised the speed and sound of reciting the outline of the great Tao to the fastest and strongest. 1 day passed. 2 days passed, 10 days passed. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. More than half of the huge mountain of immortal origin crystals had been devoured, but the change in Qin Hao's mind still showed no signs of stopping. But what was worth being happy about was that the aura of the old god had become much stronger. Moreover, there was also a seemingly strong and excited fluctuation. Chapter 1307. Old God. A wisp of Qin Hao's heart floated in the deepest part of his mind. The aura of the old god was gradually getting stronger, and the emotions that were gradually surging out of it had already made Qin Hao certain that the old god was about to wake up. Thinking of all the things that had happened in the past, Qin Hao was very excited. During the days when the old god was not around, Qin Hao deliberately did not think of it and deliberately suppressed it. Just like how he missed the girls, it did not easily appear in Qin Hao's mind. On the road to the peak of martial arts, one was destined to endure unbearable loneliness and loneliness. This was something that Qin Hao had already realized when he decided to set foot on the great world of CND alone. When the old god collapsed and fell into nirvana, he did not know what the old god had done for him, but he knew that the reason he could wake up so quickly, enter the Milky Way star area, and succeed in reincarnation so quickly was definitely due to the old god. Unfortunately, when he succeeded in nirvana, he could no longer sense the old god's aura. The aura of the Milky Way tunnel in the vast thousand chaotic world was the only remaining aura of the old god. Qin Hao had always thought that it might be the place where the old god was. No matter what, when he was strong enough, he had to go back and take a look. However, all this time, Chen Hao had not really cared, because in the depths of his mind, he did not think that the old god would die. Subconsciously, he firmly believed that the old god would return one day. Now, the old god's aura finally appeared again. Chi! Chi! Boom! 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 Countless immortal core crystals were still exploding, and the released heaven and earth spiritual chi did not stop at all and disappeared strangely. As time passed, the old god's aura became stronger and stronger. Finally, after a full year, when the mountain of immortal core crystals that Chen Hao had obtained was almost used up, Master, the familiar voice of the old god floated directly in the depths of Chen Hao's mind. Old god. You're finally awake. Master, I woke up before you woke up. However, when you reincarnated into your true self, I had no choice but to follow you into nirvana. Old god's voice was very clear, but it was still very weak. Follow me to nirvana. What do you mean? When you reincarnated and underwent nirvana, it was like starting from scratch. Whether it was your soul or the space in your mind, it was a process of condensing from nothing. If I did nothing in your mind, it would definitely affect you and even cause the nirvana of your true self to fail. At that time, I could either leave you and wait for you to succeed in your nirvana before entering your mind, or I could undergo nirvana with you and start from scratch. I chose to undergo nirvana with you. You're going to undergo nirvana with me? Chen Hao asked in surprise. Yes, Master. Hee. After the nirvana of my true self, I woke up earlier than you, Master. However, I need to absorb too much energy to come out of the nirvana of my true self. I only dare to start when your energy meets my requirements. Otherwise, once I start, I won't be able to stop. If I don't have enough energy, I'll fail. I thought it would take a long time, hee. I didn't expect Master to obtain such a huge amount of supreme-grade celestial origin crystals. Damn. Old God, don't tell me you won't leave me with this little bit. Although Chen Hao was happy, when he heard the old god say that the celestial origin crystals were still lacking, his heart ached. That was a huge amount of wealth. A mountain of celestial origin crystals. As Wan Yishui said, it was enough for her to use for a lifetime. Although he had used up more than half of it, the remaining little bit was still a huge number for Chen Hao. It was still very useful. But the old god's appetite was too fucking exaggerated, this. I really can't leave it. Not only can I not leave it, I'm afraid you'll have to frantically devour the energy of heaven and earth to help me, and that. I'll borrow the celestial origin crystals that little girl Wan Yishui collected in her mind. Chen Hao was speechless. Master, do you have the heart to see me unable to truly awaken? Where in the world can you find a super refiner and alchemist like me? Before my true self underwent nirvana, my original body could transform into 100 different forms and be used by Master. Now that it has successfully undergone nirvana, how strong will it be? Also, in this world, who can cooperate better than me with Master? My realm is always one level higher than Master's, just a little bit more powerful. As long as Master and I fuse further, the increase in strength will be very, very significant. At least, I feel that after we fuse, if we meet that pair of bitches Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei again, we definitely won't have to run. In fact, we can trample on them however we want. Oh, right, Master, I've awakened a lot of memories. There are memories of the previous Master, the previous Master, the previous Master, the previous Master, and the previous Master. Stop. Chen Hao was speechless and stopped the old god from continuing. He finally realized that the old god had become as shameless as Master Fatty after his true self had undergone nirvana. Moreover, from the old god's words, it was obvious that he was well aware of Chen Hao's experiences during this period of time. In short, Master, every time I realize that I'm not that great, I'll realize that I've underestimated myself. Now, I finally understand that I should be the legendary Gao Qi whose memories and cultivation have been sealed. As Master improves, I'll improve automatically. Moreover, there's a very, very important point. Stop. Old God, first, principles are still principles, and they remain unchanged. Second, no matter how much you use, you have to make up for it. Treasure hunter is still there, right? Of course, but it can't appear for the time being. I can only summon it after I've completely undergone nirvana. That's fine. Continue to swallow. Buzz. Chenhao's mind moved, and a strand of divine thought floated into the only pure land in his mind that was sealed off. At this moment, Wan Yishui was sitting cross-legged. Her brows were slightly furrowed, and her delicate body was trembling non-stop. Her entire body was drenched in cold sweat, and runes were flickering on the wound on her chest. Even now, it was still emitting a sharp aura. This was the Dao mark left behind by Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei. It had already been a whole year, but Wan Yishui still hadn't gotten rid of it. From this, it could be seen how high Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei's comprehension of the heavenly Dao was. It's been a year, Sister Shui, do you really not need any help? Chenhao's voice once again resounded in Wan Yishui's mind. In the past year, although Chenhao was immersed in a state of madness, Wan Yishui's every move couldn't escape his senses. He had offered to help many times, but the other party didn't agree. She insisted that he get rid of Chenhao's Dao mark. This also made Chenhao increasingly aware of this girl's stubbornness. Chapter 1308. No need. Wan Yishui said. Although self-healing was a little painful, it was a rare cultivation opportunity for cultivators. However, this was for Dao marks whose cultivation realm was slightly higher than the injured person. If the difference was too great, it would be a kind of torture, and Wan Yishui's current situation was more or less torture. She really did not want to use this method to cultivate, but the strange thing was that the place where she was injured was too sensitive. Her chest. Although she knew that the fatty was not a real lecherous person, asking the fatty to help heal her would inevitably touch the wound. How could Wan Yishui, who still maintained her primordial yin body, be embarrassed? You really don't need it. Isn't it just your chest? What kind of boobs have I not seen before? Just this little bun of yours is not enough for me to look at. No need. Fatty, don't talk nonsense. Wan Yishui said with a red face. She cursed the fatty in her heart for being shameless. Although she did not understand the terms the fatty used, she could understand the fatty's meaning. All right. However, you don't need my help, but I need your help. You need my help? Wan Yishui was slightly puzzled. That's right, take out all the immortal essence crystals you collected. Let me see. What for? Wan Yishui said vigilantly. Don't be nervous. Do you think I care about your little bit of immortal essence crystals? I just found something and need you to take it out to verify. What did you find? Take it out and you will naturally understand. Hurry up, don't delay my cultivation. Alright, don't even be greedy for this little bit of mine. Wan Yishui looked at the fatty who had transformed with her mind. She felt that there was a conspiracy, but she could not think of what the fatty could do. After all, he already had a mountain of immortal essence crystals. There was no need to be greedy for the little bit she collected, right? Chi. 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 Wan Yishui's glabella shone brightly, and immortal essence crystals gushed out. Strange. How could it be? Quick, take it out for me to see. The fatty waved his hand and the immortal essence crystals floated in front of him. His eyes were filled with doubt, as if he was talking to himself. At the same time, he urged Wan Yishui to take them out. Wan Yishui's curiosity was also aroused by the fatty, but she could not see what was wrong with the immortal essence crystals. What was the fatty curious about? Why are they all fine? Are they all trash that stumped me? Yours is the real one. Hurry up, Sister Shui, hurry up, take them all out. Fatty shook his head. Fatty, why can't I see anything unusual? Everything I've collected is abnormal, but yours is indeed not. Hurry up, what's wrong with you? We'll talk about it after I finish reading it. The strand of old God's mind was speechless as he looked at his master's mind incarnation who had disguised his appearance. Although old God knew everything about Qin Hao, it was too much for him to be so vulgar, especially to a little girl. We can start now. When Wani Shui took out all his immortal essence crystals, Qin Hao's voice echoed in the old God's mind. Qi. 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 Rumble. Rumble. Sympathy was sympathy, but old God did not hesitate at all. He immediately carried out Qin Hao's orders. There was no other way. His nirvana of true self was different from Qin Hao's nirvana of true self. If he wanted to succeed, he had to devour endless energy. Ah, ah. Two screams were heard. My immortal essence crystals. Fatty, what's going on? So it's the same as mine. The fatty's face was full of shock. He said shamelessly, Sister Shui, there's something wrong with these immortal essence crystals. Look, the mountain of immortal essence crystals that I collected is also gone. It also exploded like this, but there's no energy left behind. Buzz. Fatty directly connected with Wani Shui's mind. A gentleman is magnanimous. Wani Shui, on the other hand, widened his eyes and mouth in shock. Even though he had long known that the fatty's mental space had the ability similar to the mental world and was incomparably huge, when his mind truly merged with the fatty's mind into the entire mental world, the shock it brought to Wani Shui was still incomparably huge. For a moment, he even forgot that his immortal essence crystals had exploded and disappeared. Sigh, I was happy for nothing. These immortal essence crystals are probably too old. They only have the shape and meaning, but they don't really have the original spiritual energy of heaven and earth. You, integrated into your great world? As soon as Qin Hao finished speaking, Wani Shui, who had woken up, asked directly. How could, do you think I'm stupid? Damn fatty. In this year, I used a lot of energy to heal myself, and I relied on them to support me. Every one of them is a real top-grade immortal essence crystal. Not good. Someone's coming. Sister Shui, you continue, I'll go out and take a look. Chi. The shameless fatty directly left. Wani Shui was so angry that he stomped his feet, but he could only accept it. Phew, Qin Hao's mood was relaxed as he completely withdrew from the state of cultivation. Of course, he knew that Wani Shui was not so easy to fool. The reason why he did this was to find an excuse for him to directly ask to borrow immortal essence crystals. How embarrassing would that be? Another point was to force Wani Shui to make a certain decision. Sometimes, it was necessary to use force on this stubborn girl. Otherwise, they would continue to persist in meaningless or meaningless things. Qin Hao felt the surging power in his body. He knew that although this year had helped the old god recover to the greatest extent, under the refinement of the primary instruction of the Great Tao and a large number of immortal essence crystals, his strength had also improved greatly. My true origin and physical strength have increased by at least 20%, but I still don't feel full. Boom. Qin Hao casually threw a punch, and the boundary that had been formed a year ago was directly turned into ashes. It's meaningless to continue refining. I must have the corresponding comprehension to improve. Nearly 3,000 times, half a year is nearly 1,500 years, Qin Hao murmured. From the old god, Qin Hao had learned that the space-time law of this secret realm space was about 3,000 times that of the great world of CND. If the old god had not solemnly said that this was based on the awakened space-time law, Qin Hao would not have believed it at all. After all, the great world of CND could be said to be the most powerful vast thousand realms that Qin Hao knew. How could the primitive secret realm surpass it by so much? However, the conclusion that the old god had deduced from the experience of the Emperor's Star later resolved Qin Hao's doubts. Damn fatty. Sure enough, as Qin Hao expected, Wani Shui's voice appeared in his mind not long after. Help me heal. Okay. You can't peek, and you can't take advantage of me. I've said it before, I'm not interested in small steamed buns. But you mean, I can do it openly? Chapter 1309. Qi. Chen Hao directly released Wan Yishui from the space in his mind. With a harmless smile on his face, he stared at Wan Yishui, who had a face full of anger and helplessness. Despicable, shameless, vulgar, evil, sinister, and cunning, this was Wan Yishui's deepest feeling. However, without the energy support of the supreme-grade celestial origin crystal, Wan Yishui would not be able to resist Xiao Mantian's powerful Dao mark for long, let alone comprehend it. Therefore, she could only choose to let the fatty help her to break the Dao mark and completely heal her. And this was all because of the shameless fatty. If you weren't shameless, we would still be friends. Wan Yishui glared at the fatty angrily for half a minute before she finally choked out a sentence. Pfft, but this sentence made the fatty spit out. Ha ha ha. Sister Shui, get ready. Focus your mind, get rid of all distracting thoughts, and sense carefully. Don't think about Ruo Feifei. Qi. Qi. Chen Hao laughed and released waves of energy, immediately binding Wan Yishui. They sat cross-legged facing each other. At the same time, what made Wan Yishui's face turn red was that Chen Hao's right hand contained endless mysterious runes, and he slapped her full right breast. Wan Yishui wanted to dodge and stop, but the fatty's powerful binding had predicted all of this, making her unable to resist at all. The only thing she could do was to bite her lips and close her eyes. Since you can't resist, just enjoy it obediently, the fatty's damnable voice made Wan Yishui feel ashamed. She wished she could find a hole to hide in, and she regretted letting the fatty do it. But now, she had no way out. Buzz. The sudden high-frequency vibration from her soft breasts made Wan Yishui's entire body go numb. However, what made her slightly relieved was that the fatty's seemingly wretched claws did not directly press on her soft breasts. Instead, endless mysterious runes were sent out through the air, as if they had condensed into tentacles. It's just a joke. Why are you so nervous? Wang Zai little Mantu, I'm really not interested. Hurry up, focus your mind. I'll help you comprehend it. Just treat it as compensation with your celestial origin crystal. The fatty said without restraint, but against his will. Wang Zai Xiao Mantu. If Wan Yishui's twin peaks were also called small steamed buns, then there wouldn't be many women in the world who could be called big steamed buns. Although he did not touch it with his own hands, the sensation of his tentacles was no less than real hands. It was full, round, and firm. It could definitely be considered a perfect chest shape. Even if Fatty did not have any improper thoughts, at this moment, out of the most normal reaction of a man, he would still have a certain feeling. Especially when he thought about what the old god had said. He and Wan Yishui were going to spend more than 1,000 years together. He couldn't do it for real. Could he just let his imagination run wild? There's nothing wrong with fantasizing. Hiss, however, in just a moment, Chen Hao's mind had completely regained its clarity, and had temporarily fused with Wan Yishui's mind, allowing Wan Yishui to clearly sense how he had broken the Dao marks left behind by Xiao Mantian. Even though Chen Hao did not want to admit it, he had to admit that the Dao marks that Xiao Mantian had left behind were difficult for him to do. Now that he could easily break through them, it was because he was already familiar with the Dao marks. Otherwise, even for him, it would take him several days of comprehension before he could decipher it. Hiss. 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 Right when Chen Hao was healing Wan Yishui, 4 figures suddenly flew over from the sky. 2 men and 2 women. Obviously, they were from the same power. There are actually people healing. Their auras seem rather strong. They are from the Dahua Academy. After they saw Chen Hao and Wan Yishui's appearances, the 4 of them immediately confirmed Chen Hao and Wan Yishui's identities. Before they stepped foot into the primal secret realm, they could easily remember the 10,000+ disciples of the 3,000+ powers with a single glance. There are only 2 of them. Those 2 powerful external aides aren't here. Hee hee. If all 4 of them were here, then we could only hide. As for the 2 of them, we can't hold back. What do you think? Of course. Not to mention that they are still healing. Hee hee. We wasted an entire year in order to avoid the Ocean of Clouds Academy. They are injured, and I presume they are from fighting for treasures. Moreover, with their strength, they should have gained quite a bit in a year, right? That's for sure. The heavens are helping us. Let's go. Hiss. 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 The two men and two women had a trace of excitement on their faces as they landed beside Chen Hao and Wan Yishui. Chen Hao and Wan Yishui sensed the four of them the moment they appeared in the void. Moreover, they opened their eyes. However, they were at a critical juncture in their recovery. If they gave up now, it would be equivalent to wasting all their previous efforts. Unless it was necessary, Chen Hao was naturally unwilling to give up. Moreover, what made Wan Yishui slightly surprised was that the fatty who seemed to be very relaxed earlier suddenly became unwell the moment the four of them appeared. His fat face was covered in cold sweat, and he was terrifyingly pale. His chubby body was trembling slightly, as if he had exhausted too much energy, or the Dao marks on Wan Yishui's body were too strong. However, in just an instant, Wan Yishui thought of what the wretched fatty was up to. Therefore, before the fatty could remind her, the intelligent Wan Yishui instantly became unwell. Her pretty face was flushed red, as if she was in a half-awake state due to her heavy injuries. He. The leader's cultivation was obviously the highest, and he was also the core disciple of the four. After he slowly landed beside the two of them, he chuckled. His gaze swept past the fatty and Wan Yishui, and finally landed on Wan Yishui's face. Especially when he saw the fatty stretch out his hand to help Wan Yishui heal, his gaze paused slightly on Wan Yishui's full and round breasts, shining with a gaze that a man should have. However, it quickly disappeared. This Dao marks chi is so profound, the person who injured you must be very powerful, right? Bro. Brother. You. What do you want to do? The fatty's gaze locked onto the other party, and his voice trembled slightly as he asked in pain. What do you think? The leader smiled and turned to look at Chen Hao. His gaze was filled with a sense of ridicule. We are currently healing. I hope you don't mess around. Ha! Fatty, you're not stupid. Before we came, I heard that you were the chief student of Dehua Academy, and you even defeated Yun Tian. I couldn't tell at all, but your luck seems to be pretty good. Another person's gaze seemed to be a little blatant as he glanced at Wan Yishui's body. Primordial Yin body. Furthermore, she was a genius female disciple of Dehua Academy. In this primal secret realm competition, it was destined to be a competition without any rules. No matter what they did, it was within the rules. No one could control them, and they would not be restricted by any laws. Since they were going to kill and steal, wouldn't it be a pity to waste the primordial Yin body of a genius? Chapter 13:10. Cut the crap. Hand over everything you have and we can give you a quick death. One of the female disciples frowned and said coldly when she saw the perverted look in the young man's eyes. How can we do that? It's still a waste. Junior brother Wu Peng, shut up. You have to have a bottom line. In a competition, the strong are respected, but you can kill but not humiliate. Fatty, Wan Yishui, right? Hand over everything and pay a level of cultivation and we can let you live. The leader winked at the other young man and said. Senior brother Lin Tao is right. Alright, hand it over now. You want to mess around? Although the fatty still looked like he was in pain, his voice was no longer trembling. His already small eyes narrowed into a slit as he looked at the four of them. If you don't want to die, be quick. The lady said coldly. Hand over everything and pay a level of cultivation and you will let us go. The fatty seemed to be intimidated by the other party's aura and frowned. Promise not to touch her. Do you have a choice? Cut the crap. I will count to 3, the two of you, open up your mind space or die. Chi 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 chi. Following the leader's words, the four of them surrounded Chen Hao and Wan Yishui. At the same time, they released extremely powerful pressure, which pressed down on Chen Hao and Wan Yishui. Their bodies bent at the same time and blood flowed from the corners of their mouths. Wan Yishui was indeed not faking it, but she knew that the fatty was definitely not real. She was very clear about how strong the fatty's ability to withstand pressure was. This bit of pressure, even she could withstand it when she was not injured, let alone the abnormal fatty. Similarly, Wan Yishui was not at all worried that the four of them would be a threat to them. In the entire primitive secret realm, only the top Xiao Mantian and a few others could threaten the perverted fatty. The rest were simply asking for death. 1. The leader was very satisfied with everyone's cooperation. The fatty and Wan Yishui's performance was also within his expectations. At this moment, in his eyes, the two of them were already prey in his hands. Whether they killed them or cut them off, they were all firmly in his hands. 2. He slowly extended his hand and the mysterious and powerful laws of the Abhijna started to gather. 3. However, what surprised the leader was that his divine power law had not been condensed yet. He had just shouted, 2, but someone had shouted, 3. Chi! 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 There was no time for him to think. Similarly, the other three didn't have time to think. An incomparably sharp sword light suddenly appeared in their eyes at the same time, rapidly enlarging. He didn't have time to react because this sword light was truly too swift. What was even stranger was that it didn't contain any divine ability or laws, nor did it contain any energy. It was soundless like a venomous snake flicking its tongue, and it seemed to step on the pulse of the heavens and the earth and the circulation of all things as it flashed past. In their eyes, the heavens and earth dimmed, leaving only the incomparably sharp sword light. Puff! Puff! Wan Yishui's eyes widened. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. A sword without any energy or divine ability laws had directly wiped out four heads that had been alive just a moment ago. The four heads were still rolling on the ground with their eyes wide open. The four headless bodies had their blood essence soaring into the sky. Impossible! Impossible! Close it up. Ah! I'm going to kill you. Fuck! Shameless, how dare you launch a sneak attack? After a short period of pain and shock, the four primordial spirits directly controlled the heads and bodies to fly up, and at the same time, they cursed at Chen Hao. However, Qi! 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 The fat man who was sitting cross-legged didn't even stand up. His sword fingers turned into numerous afterimages in the void. In an instant, the whole world was filled with sharp sword light that contained monstrous killing intent. Boom! 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 The four heads and the headless bodies didn't even have time to unite before they were turned into minced meat in the endless sword light. The moment the heads exploded, countless things spilled out. Obviously, that was the result of the primordial spirits not having time to completely separate, and the explosions continued. However, whether it was the spiritual items of heaven and earth, immortal origin crystals, or the energy contained in their bodies, at this time, they were all bound by invisible tentacles and directly entered between the fat man's eyebrows. Devour. You. What do you want to do? The four primordial spirits, bound by the irresistible tentacles, floated in front of Chen Hao, extremely terrified. What do I want to do? Ha ha ha. What do you think I want to do? The fat man, with a harmless smile on his face, glanced at the four primordial spirits and asked in return. Sorry, we were wrong before, please let us go. Sorry. Let you go. Damn you, your words are better than a song. If I were really weak, would you let me go? Even she would be humiliated to death by you, right? The fat on Chen Hao's face trembled. He stood up and pointed at the nose of the person who spoke and scolded. Although they were only primordial spirits, in the Daluo Golden Wonderland, especially for geniuses like them, their primordial spirits were relatively solid. No, it won't, don't fucking talk nonsense with me. What else do you have in your mind? Call them all out. No, directly open up the space in your mind, or die. I'll count to 3. I'll give. Chi. I'll give too. Please let me go, no matter what request you have, I'll agree to it. As long as you don't kill me. The woman said with a touch of fervor in her eyes. Me too. I'll be at your disposal. Bitch, she's 10,000 times prettier than you. Don't fucking disgust me. The fatty said disdainfully. At the same time, four spiritual tentacles suddenly came out from between his eyebrows and instantly entered the other party's mind. Originally, the four of them thought that he was just going to rob them of their belongings, but a moment later, the four of them collapsed to the ground in shock. Not only was their mind emptied, even the energy that they had accumulated over many years of cultivation was sucked dry. What kind of monster was this? Remember to open your eyes in your next life. No. I'm willing to pay for my own cultivation. Don't kill me. The grace of a drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. I didn't say that I wouldn't kill you if you cut off your own cultivation. Die. Chi. Chi. Bang. Are you stupid? Wani Shui, who was stunned, frightened, and terrified, suddenly felt a pain in her forehead. She was awakened by Qin Hao's violent knock. You're the one who's stupid. Fatty, aren't you too cruel? You didn't even spit out the bones when you ate people. Wani Shui, who came back to her senses, said without hesitation. She also didn't know what was going on with her. Fatty was obviously very scary, but now, she wasn't afraid of him at all. Some people deserve to die. They happen to be. Don't forget how they wanted to deal with us before, especially you. If they were the ones who won, you really don't know how miserable you would be right now. Wani Shui shuddered and didn't say anything else. If you delay, all your previous efforts will be wasted. Let's start again. Don't restrain me. The good show is yet to come. If I don't restrain you, what if something goes wrong? Even if nothing goes wrong, you can't help but moan. How embarrassing would that be? Nonsense. I won't. Good. Begin. Cultivators had to endure loneliness. They were destined to accompany each other for 1,500 years. Qin Hao also thought it through. There was no need to deliberately avoid anything. Especially, sometimes, gratitude and grudges might have been destined from the beginning. Chapter 13:11. Letting nature take its course should be the best way to deal with it. After a full 6 hours, under the guidance of Qin Hao, the marks on Wani Shui's chest finally disintegrated little by little. The pain that tormented her for a year and fought with her over and over again finally disappeared. That comfortable feeling, as if the shackles that bound her soul had suddenly been broken, was simply indescribable. Ah! Perhaps because she was too excited, Wani Shui suddenly threw herself into the fatty's arms and hugged him tightly, but because he was too fat, she could not hug him and excitedly screamed. Seduction, fuck, this is definitely seduction. The fatty felt Wani Shui's passionate embrace, as well as the charming and gentle feeling brought about by the compression of her chest, and was a little dazed. The feeling was naturally very good, but was there a need to be so excited? The fatty did not push away the excited Wani Shui, but reservedly hung his hands on both sides of his body, as if he did not know where to put them. As an experienced person, especially a young and vigorous person, the fatty knew the horror of dry wood and fierce fire. This was not the time to test how strong one's willpower was. No matter how strong one's willpower was, even if one's state of mind was not disturbed, it would ultimately affect the underlying balance of yin and yang. Therefore, once it started, it could not end, it had to go all the way. Only by truly completing the final step would he be successful. Therefore, the fatty absolutely could not indulge himself to take the first step at this time, otherwise, the sea of bitterness would be boundless. The screaming Wani Shui finally stopped and lowered her head. It could be said that she, who was lying in Qin Hao's arms, was slightly stunned when she saw Qin Hao's nowhere to put hands, and then the corners of her mouth hooked up into a smug smile. Is that enough? Thank you. You're welcome. Remember not to seduce me in the future, I'm not a good person. Maybe if I can't hold it in, I'll do you on the spot, and not take responsibility. Don't think that I don't dare to hug you, I just don't want to start. Let's go. The fatty shrugged, and then directly soared into the air. Wan Yishui's face was slightly red. She did not expect the fatty to be so direct and use such unpleasant words. Seduce? Who did he think he was? Damn that fatty. But due to the fatty's strength, Wan Yishui naturally did not dare to say anything, and could only follow. The space-time laws here are probably thousands of times more than the outside world. Be mentally prepared for a long battle, it can't be. How did you know? Feeling. Chi. The two streaks of light, one in front and one behind, finally began to delve deeper. A path of seizing treasures that was filled with blood, cruelty, and where the strong were respected had finally officially begun. Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei were a pair of Taoist companions. Young master of saber and sword Ding Hao, who dared to provoke Xiao Mantian, and the two disciples of the new generation sword king Chen Taishu, Qing Yang and Miao Xian, could be said to be as many experts as the clouds. This was the first time that the god of slaughter Chen Hao had crossed swords with a true genius from the great world of CND. What kind of performance would he have when he transformed into a wretched fatty? What kind of encounter would he have? Master! Master! Chi 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 chi, streams of light drifted out from the gate of time and space, and beautiful figures of different styles slowly landed in the deepest part of the sanctum. This was the ancient chaos great thousand world. Master, who are they? Almost at the same time, the eyes of several beautiful young women flashed with a hint of surprise as they looked at the old man who was sitting cross-legged with a smile on his face and asked. Beside the old man, there was an extremely handsome young man. His hands were holding his head, his legs were crossed, and there was a beautiful flower in his mouth. There was an invisible trace of evil charm in his eyes as he sized up the young women who had just arrived. His naked eyes were very annoying. And the young women who had just arrived ignored him. They didn't even give him a second glance. And beside the young man, there was a young woman who was sexy and cute like a fairy. Her entire body emitted an invisible holy and ethereal aura. Her eyes also swept across the young women, and she muttered a name when she saw one. Sister Xue, Little Wu, Mainyang, Little Yan, Yu Yu, Little Ting, Huan Huan, Lei Lei, Ningbing, Little Yan, Sister Mei, Little Qing, Chen Xue, Helian Wuzi, Hu Mainyang, Tan Tai Lian, Xia Yu Yu, Long Ting, Leng Ninghuan, Leng Ningle, Bailey Ningbing, Chen Yan, Xiao Mei, and Chen Xiaoqing. Including me and Sister Qianqian, that's 14. Teacher Si Xian probably won't be able to escape from Brother Hao's evil clutches. 15, plus. Phew. Pairs are so big. Little nurse Lu Hui, the reincarnated immortal emperor of all things, was the only one who hadn't stepped into the cycle of reincarnation. Just by looking at their current appearances, she could naturally recognize who was who. Although the experiences of this cycle of reincarnation were different, and their temperaments were slightly different from the original bodies, it was easy to change mountains and rivers, but a person's nature couldn't be changed. Relatively speaking, this change was completely negligible. What a scoundrel! What kind of luck is this? Big Brother is so handsome, elegant, and talented. How come I don't have luck with women? They're all clearly the women I deeply love, so why are they so cruel to me? Ah! Another youth was naturally the seventh anima that had completely linked up with his memories. At this moment, he looked frivolous, but in his heart, he was thinking about the original body. There was no need to doubt his jealousy and hatred. One after another, fresh cabbage was placed in front of him. Moreover, they were all his, yet they ignored him. How could he feel good? Master, why didn't I hear you mention these disciples? Chen Yan went to Yilan's side like a little bird and said, it feels so familiar, as if I've seen them somewhere before, ha ha ha. Long Ting let out a charming laugh. Little sister, you also have this feeling? Big sister also has this feeling. It's so familiar, so familiar. I feel that all of you are very familiar. At this moment, Chen Xue, who was still wearing a blue dress, suddenly asked, "Master, I'm a reincarnated body. Or should I say, all of us are reincarnated bodies, right? The name that sister just said is the name of our original body, right?" "Master," Hu Mainyang said. Immortal light lingered around her. Her innate Tao embryo didn't seem to have changed in the slightest. Reincarnation. Hellion Wuzi, who was as cold as the moon, muttered to herself. Her bright and clean forehead faintly wrinkled. An absent-minded, hazy image suddenly appeared in her mind along with the fluctuations of her mind. Reincarnation, moreover, it's reincarnation within reincarnation. How, Qin Shui, Hu Mainyang, Long Ting, Tan Tai Lian, Xia Yuyu, Leng Ning Huan, Leng Ning Lu, Qin Yan, Xiao Mei, Qin Xiaoqing. Lu Hui. Hellion Wuzi's gaze swept over the girls and reported their real names. Senior Yilan. How's seventh anima, ha ha ha. Yilan, who had been smiling and not speaking, finally laughed out loud. Chapter 13:12. Little Wu, you've experienced the awakening of the endless cycle of reincarnation, so you're the easiest to break through the old man's seal. Alright, you've all sensed it. In fact, after you've broken through to the Daluo Jingxian realm, it won't be long before you awaken all your memories and fuse with your original bodies. The old man wanted to wait for you, but there's no need for that now. There's not much loss for you to fuse with your original bodies. Moreover, you didn't cultivate bitterly in this reincarnation. You've all been arranged with the best conditions and environments, Senior Yilan. Master, you're Yilan. Chen Yan exclaimed in surprise. You're Chen Yan, the controller, the killing god Chen Hao's sister, cough cough, cultivation partner, ah? I'm Long Ting. I'm so powerful. Ha ha ha. Long Ting immediately laughed complacently, laughing so hard that her body trembled. The other women, who had not felt much, began to connect the dots one by one. Their hearts were filled with an inexplicable feeling, but there was no doubt that they were all excited. Who was Yilan? Who was the controller, the killing god Chen Hao? Including their own names, in their hearts, they were all high and mighty existences that were worshipped, envied, and revered by all the cultivators in the ancient chaos-boundless world. Alright, I'll undo the seal for you now and fuse with your original bodies. Qi. 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 Beams of dazzling immortal light appeared between Yilan's fingers and entered the women's foreheads. Buzz. Boom. Rumble. In an instant, the seals of the women's reincarnation were completely undone. A terrifying roar sounded in their minds, and the sealed original bodies began to fuse with their current selves. Qi. Qi. Not long after the women began to fuse with their original bodies, the doors of time and space opened again. Ah. Sister-in-law. Senior Yilan. This is. Why are the sisters-in-law? Why are they all here? Are they awakening? Figures descended one after another. They were like a coiling dragon, and the aura around them was countless times more terrifying. They were already at the peak of the late-stage Grand Mist Supremacy realm. Li Yang and Chen Ling's spiritual altars were even more dazzling, and their immortal spiritual qi was even more oppressive. The two of them breathed in and out as if they had already become one. Du Jing, Lan Feng, Ito Tai, Fan Dongsheng, and Pan Donglu had also become many times stronger. They had all stepped into the peak of the late stage of the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. However, the one with the strongest aura among them was Chen Hao, who had 30% of Chen Hao's charm, but was slightly different from Chen Hao. Chen Nan was not tall, but just by standing there, he gave off an unshakable feeling. His whole body unconsciously released an awe-inspiring qi that seemed to connect the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Vast, boundless, and awe-inspiring. Sister-in-law, little Yen. Chen Nan smiled and called out softly. Her eyes were sparkling and translucent. Men didn't cry easily, but now, Chen Nan, who had grown to become the most powerful existence among Coiling Dragon and the others, had tears in his eyes. In the end, Chen Nan's gaze landed on Yilan. Senior. Do you have news of my brother? Will I be able to see my brother? No one knew how much Chen Nan missed his older brother. Since he was young, Chen Hao had been his idol, and he had always been the person he imitated and chased after. But now, to him, his innocent childhood was perhaps the happiest time of his life, because at that time, he could often be with his older brother. Ever since he stepped into the cultivation world, he had always been chasing after his brother's footsteps. Even in his dreams, he wanted to fight side by side with his brother. No one knew the position of this brotherhood in his heart. Yilan was afraid that little Yen and his sisters-in-law would be affected by their feelings and let them reincarnate, but Chen Nan wasn't. Therefore, Chen Nan could only suppress his feelings and cultivate crazily. He didn't ask for much. He only hoped to catch up to his brother one day and become his right-hand man. Now, he had surpassed Coiling Dragon, Du Jing, and the others by a large margin. Boss. Yes, boss. Why didn't I think of it? Senior Yilan must have summoned all of us here because only news of boss would do this, right? Hearing Chen Nan's words, Du Jing, Coiling Dragon, and the others immediately came back to their senses. That's right. Little Nan, your progress is astonishing. Yilan's eyes flashed as he stared at Chen Nan for a moment, then said. I had some luck. Senior, you flatter me. How is my brother now? How did you get news of him? Your brother is right here. Can't you ask me? Seventh Life, who had been sitting with his legs crossed, finally stood up and said to Chen Nan. Seventh brother, don't interrupt. Chen Nan didn't push him aside, but he called him seventh brother instead of brother. Moreover, he clearly didn't want to talk too much with him. In his heart, as well as everyone else's, there was only one Chen Hao. Damn, I know, okay. Not only do I have news of my detestable true body, you might even be able to see his image in a moment. Seventh Life said. As he spoke, he suddenly looked at Yilan and said, Master, you've seen it for yourself. I'm just a puppet that isn't welcomed. Even though I'm extremely talented and several times more awesome than my true body, I'm still a puppet, little Seven, it's your own position that's not right, okay? Nurse Lu Hui said. Master, I hope you won't stop me. You should know my personality. Once I've decided on something, no one can change it. If you force me into a corner, I'll directly die for you to see. Just like this, there's no need to look for me. When I return again, I'll also bring with me supreme glory, glory that's even more powerful than this sovereign's. When I fuse with my true body, ha ha ha. I'll show you. Buzz. However, Daluo Golden Wonderland's seventh life suddenly trembled and disappeared before everyone's eyes. Yilan smiled and shook his head, but didn't stop him. There were some things that couldn't be forced, not to mention Chen Hao's 9 lives profound art, even Xi Xian's third life showed a strong sense of competition with his true body. Not to mention the seventh life, which seemed to be, or perhaps really was, more talented than Chen Hao's true body. How abnormal. It's just the Daluo Golden Wonderland, but he's already cultivated the greater teleportation art to the extreme. Among us, only little Nan can compare. As expected of boss's seventh life. How many years has it been? Coiling Dragon and the others were aghast. Alright, don't worry about him. This is for you guys. Try it on, senior, is what he said true? Is he going to use this? Chen Nan asked after seeing the helmets that Yilan took out. They were very similar to the helmets of the second world, but had a very different aura. P.S. I still owe everyone 18 chapters. Today, I'll update 10 chapters. 1 chapter is the minimum, 9 chapters are supplementary. I'll return 9 chapters first. The next 9 chapters will be updated every hour. Chapter 1313. Yes, this is also called the Spirit Realm Helmet, but it is connected to a wider space, or to another real world. We call it the Immortal Realm Space. Furthermore, to be able to communicate with the immortal realm of the great world of CND, your brother has already contacted the old man. Ah. Really? This is great. Senior, can we meet up with boss inside? Yes. However, you will only be able to meet up when you are on the path to becoming an immortal emperor. Ah. What is the immortal emperor's path? Sit down. When they finish fusing, old man will tell you more about it. Now, you can enter the celestial realm and have a look. You can just drip a drop of blood on it. Yilan closed his eyes after he finished speaking. The unification of the ancient chaos great thousand worlds, especially for the peak existences like Chen Nan, Pan Long, and Du Jing, could stay here for hundreds or thousands of years. However, if they continued to stay here, their development would be restricted. The reason was simple, they had no opponents, therefore, Yilan didn't stop the seventh anima from leaving. Most likely, the great world of CND was the place where geniuses gathered. Similarly, perhaps it was time for Qinhao's women and brothers and sisters to leave. They were the hope of ancient chaos. Others could forget, but Yilan, who deeply understood how powerful the master of the Shao clan's ancestor was, would never forget. 50,000 years might be the time when the real Shao clan's ancestor discovered the situation with ancient chaos. At that time, Yilan was unable to determine exactly what would happen. Even though ancient chaos had been unified, the restrictions on his body had been completely removed, and he had also advanced to the true immortal king realm, and his strength was rapidly increasing. It was still a waste of hundreds of millions of years. A person who was originally stronger than him, and whose talent was not inferior to his, how strong was he now? Yilan didn't dare to imagine. Planet Dehua Academy, Dojo. In the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm, the Theory of Yin and Yang Souls class had just ended. Sitting cross-legged, Si Xian was still immersed in the concept that her teacher had condensed, carefully comprehending it. It had been more than half a year. Si Xian did not have much time to think about Fatty due to the tight schedule. Although she missed him very much, she could not waste such a rare opportunity to cultivate. When a true immortal king imparted the Tao, not to mention imparting the most basic profundities of the great Tao, even a casual remark from him would benefit him for the rest of his life. How could it be wasted? Moreover, Si Xian had no choice but to train as hard as she could because of the abnormal Fatty in her subconscious. Humans were just like that. If you were with outstanding people, you would become outstanding. Birds of a feather flock together. It was the same principle, let alone a man and a woman who had developed feelings for each other. Sichuan had no choice but to work hard. Chen Si. Suddenly, a cultured and refined voice floated into Si Xian's ears. Am I disturbing you? Si Xian frowned slightly and a trace of disgust appeared on her face. She suddenly opened her eyes and said angrily, "Get lost." Hee hee. I realized that I've really fallen in love with you. I admit that I came looking for you because I was still brooding over your first rejection. I'm a proud person and I don't want to lose to anyone, especially a fatty who is one level lower than me. Although his talent is not bad, in my opinion, nothing can compare to me. Shameless narcissist. Si Xian said disdainfully. After she finished speaking, she got up and left. However, the person followed her like a shadow. He seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll, but he was like a shooting star streaking across the sky. No matter how fast Si Xian sped up, she could not shake him off. This person was none other than the captain of the Starlight Squad, Murong Qianhua. At that time, I was just trying to vent my anger. But now, my heart tells me that you are the woman I need the most in my life. I hope you will seriously consider it. Murong Qianhua said in a seemingly serious manner. I've said it before. Give up. Si Xian said rudely. Anger rose in her heart, but there was nothing she could do. The only thing she could do was to return to her palace as soon as possible and block him outside. Otherwise, she would have to endure this fly that she could not chase away and could not scold away. Maybe you and Fatty are truly in love, and I shouldn't get involved. After all, as long as you're happy, it's my greatest happiness. Murong Qianhua's gentle voice continued to sound disgusting. However, anyone who heard this voice could feel that this person was speaking from the bottom of his heart. However, according to the exact information I've received, it's impossible for Fatty to come back alive. You. What nonsense are you talking about? Xi Xian was slightly shocked. I'm not talking nonsense. I'm serious. If you don't believe me, you can ask the dean. Our academy only has him and Wani Shui participating. The other two are external aid that the dean has invited at a high price. They are the direct disciples of the Shao clan of the Galaxy King, Shao Mantian and Feng Hanwei. They are a pair of Dao companions. External aid? The Shao clan. Xi Xian's heart skipped a beat. What mission are they participating in? The fight for resources in the Emperor's Star Secret Realm. The Emperor's Star Secret Realm is a space that is hundreds and thousands of times more terrifying than the primitive Secret Realm. It is a space that the immortal Emperor has specially condensed for himself. Those who enter it will basically become stepping stones for the awakening of the immortal Emperor's reincarnation. Impossible, he won't die. He will definitely come back alive. Chen Si, wake up. Originally, there were more than 3,000 forces participating. More than 10,000 people entered, and they were all genius disciples of the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland. Shao Mantian and Feng Hanwei are the top geniuses of the great world of Xiandi. Moreover, it is said that before entering, Shao Mantian and Feng Hanwei thought that Fatty and Wani Shui would be a burden. Not to mention this, there are even stronger young Master Saber and Sword Ding Hao and young Master Godspeed, Feng Wuxing. Each of them is 10 times stronger than Fatty. However, they are still not the strongest. The strongest two are the disciples of the new generation Sword King, the truly invincible Daoyuo Qing Yang and Miao Xian. However, Murong Qianhua paused for a moment before continuing. However, after the half-year competition ended, the leaders of all the forces joined forces to activate the aura of the tokens. When they started to summon, less than 10% of the cultivators came out. Their cultivation increased at an astonishing rate because they had already spent 1,500 years in there. What about Fatty? Xi Xian asked anxiously. Her intuition told her that Murong Qianhua was not lying. He hasn't come out yet. Furthermore, there is basically no possibility of him coming out. This is because the tokens on all of them are activated automatically after the time limit. Furthermore, they can only be activated once. Now, they have already become useless. Furthermore, he, Wani Shui, Shao Mantian, Feng Hanwei, young Master Saber and Sword Ding Hao, young Master Godspeed, Feng Wuxing, and the new generation Sword King's disciples, Qing Yang and Miao Xian, have not come out. With these people around, he and Wani Shui are simply not a match for them. More importantly, the aura of the Emperor's Star Secret Realm has already completely disappeared. Chapter 13-14. Impossible. How can this be? Xi Xian muttered. That's the truth. The Emperor's Star Secret Realm uses the aura of the Primal Secret Realm to attract cultivators to enter and become stepping stones for the awakening of the spirits of all living beings. Once the conditions are met, it will naturally hide. That's an immortal Emperor-level concealment. No matter what, nothing will happen to him. I believe that nothing can stop his return. Xi Xian's eyes suddenly flashed with determination as she said in a deep voice. Chen Si, do you trust him that much? Thank you for telling me this, but please don't bother me in the future. It's impossible between you and me. Now, in the future, it's impossible. Qi. Xi Xian suddenly sped up and allowed the shameless person to follow her. However, she ignored him and turned a blind eye to him until she returned to her palace. Fatty, you'll definitely come back, right? Fatty. Chen Hao. Only now did Xi Xian feel that this seemingly harmless Fatty was just a stepping stone to open her heart. This Fatty was Chen Hao. He was cold, arrogant, and had slaughtered his way through. He was the killing god Chen Hao whose name shook ancient chaos. She was too proud to lower her head to Qin Hao, and she wouldn't admit that she liked him. However, she could act freely with the fatty. In fact, this was just a way for her to step down. Qin Hao. You were able to return to the ancient chaos great thousand worlds after your true self underwent nirvana. The spirits of all living beings are all obedient to you and are already destined to be your Tao companion. This is just the Emperor's Star secret realm. You can definitely do it. I'll wait for you. Xi Xian looked at the endless starry sky through the window and muttered with determination. Has it disappeared? Several days ago, the new Sword King, Qin Taishu, stood on a lone island that was only 100 square kilometers wide. He looked into the distance, and his gaze seemed to pierce through the endless river of stars as he softly said, "The Sword King of the new generation, Qin Taishu, is looking into the distance." As expected, it's a great tribulation. Tribulation, it should be the reincarnation of the immortal emperor, or Xiao Mantian, or Feng Hanwei. Who is the destined son of heaven? It could also be the soul of all living things. However, the greater possibility should be young noble Saber and Sword Ding Hao and young noble Godwalk Feng Wuxing. The possibility of someone else is not high. Qin Taishu's mind filtered through the information he had collected about the genius disciples who had entered the Emperor's Star's secret realm, and he secretly speculated in his heart. It was naturally related to his disciple, Miao Xian. Although Miao Xian was Qin Yang's junior sister, her talent surpassed her senior brother Qin Yang, who was born with the body of the Sword Emperor. When Qin Yang was born, 10,000 swords would automatically bow down to him. However, Miao Xian was born with the body of the Sword Emperor. She was born with the body of the Sword Emperor. Ever since he started cultivating, he had never tasted defeat under the same conditions. She had an arrogant personality and viewed all the young elites in the world as nothing. Even if it was senior brother Qin Yang, she only interacted with him because of their relationship as senior brother Qin Yang. In reality, she didn't place him in her eyes either. With such a personality, it was natural that she would encounter many tribulations in her training. However, she had defied the heavens and changed her fate time and time again, and she had always been successful. No one knew that although she looked beautiful, her hands were stained with the blood of young geniuses. She had even comprehended the will of slaughter to an extremely high level. However, the slaughter sword Dao wasn't her strong suit. The emotionless sword Dao and the destruction sword Dao were even stronger. Without 10,000 years, you won't be able to come out. Everything depends on yourselves. Qi. The new Sword King, Qin Taisu, pointed at the void after he finished speaking, and a milky white light suddenly flashed out. Soon after, he slowly closed his eyes. He was clearly still sitting there, but his entire aura had completely disappeared, as if he had turned into a part of the isolated island. 10,000 years. Senior Sword King said that it would take at least 10,000 years for there to be a result. Moreover, there might not be many who can survive. That's the Emperor's Star secret realm. Those who didn't come out have either died fighting for treasures or entered the immortal Emperor tomb. Now, even Senior Lu can't do anything. The only thing he can do is wait. Immortal Emperor tomb. Immortal Emperor tomb. We should have thought of this earlier. We shouldn't have activated the token at all. Or rather, when Elder Lu guessed that it wasn't the real primitive secret realm, we should have sent people in and brought everyone out. Sigh, I thought that it would be a huge resource. Even if we couldn't obtain it, it would be a good opportunity for my disciples. Who would have thought? How many people can come out alive after entering the immortal emperor tomb? That's controlled by the reincarnation of an immortal emperor. Outside the isolated island, the people who had waited for a full day finally received news from Qin Taishu. Among them was the dean of the University of Dahua, Qin Wanxiang. However, after receiving the news, they all fell into a discussion, feeling conflicted and regretful. They regretted not withdrawing from the competition when Elder Lu had deduced the approximate number of space-time laws. All of this happened after half a year was up. It had been more than 10 days since then. Qin Si, the dean invites you over. Ao Guang, Ling Feng, Shui Fian, the dean invites you over. The next day, after leaving their respective training halls, Si Xian, Ao Guang, Ling Feng, and Shui Fian were all notified. Ao Guang, Ling Feng, and Shui Fian were all surprised. They didn't know why the dean was looking for them, but Si Xian could vaguely guess the reason. Indeed, it was as expected. 10,000 years, maybe 10,000 years, or maybe even death, the Emperor's Star Secret Realm, the Immortal Emperor Tomb, at least 10,000 years, and other information made Si Xian's delicate body tremble again. Ao Guang, Ling Feng, and Shui Fian were indescribably surprised. At the same time, they were also worried for Fatty. Especially after hearing that there were several monstrous geniuses from the Daluo Golden Wonderland who were very famous in the great world of CND, they were even more worried for Fatty. Dean, if it's really in the Immortal Emperor Tomb, can Fatty Bro enter the Immortal Emperor space? Ao Guang asked. Of course he can. As long as the Emperor's Star Secret Realm is still in the great world of CND, there won't be any problems. Nothing can block the aura of the immortal world space, because it corresponds to the existence of the great world of CND. However, he also needs to have a consciousness to enter the immortal world space. The dean replied. All of you, me, and even someone as powerful as the new generation Sword King Chen Taishu can only wait. Perhaps, after the Star River King knows about this, he can't do anything. He's just a direct descendant of the Shao clan. The Shao clan has countless geniuses, let alone a mere Grand Luo. Even if he has the ability to do anything, the Star River King won't easily act. I called you here to let you be mentally prepared. Don't delay your own plans because you're waiting for Fatty. Now that things have come to this, we can only resign ourselves to fate. Chen Si, I'm sorry. Chen Wanxiang said sincerely. Chapter 13-15. He will come back alive. Si Xian smiled bitterly, but her eyes were resolute. Yes, I firmly believe that Fatty Bro will come back alive, and in an incomparably coquettish manner. Sister-in-law, don't worry. Fatty Bro even promised to go to Gold Dipper Planet with me. Furthermore, my intuition has always been accurate. Fatty Bro is my boss, my boss. How can he die before I die? You might not know why I was willing to submit to Fatty Bro, but I can tell you now. It's because when I first saw Fatty Bro, my intuition came from the depths of my soul. He will be the boss that I, Ao Guang, will follow for the rest of my life, and bring me unparalleled glory. Monkey, don't tell me there's something wrong with your sexual orientation. Fuck off, I'm serious. You don't understand this feeling. I don't either, but I'm sure that Fatty Bro will come back. Thank you. Ao Guang, you don't need to comfort me. I believe more than you that he will come back alive to see me. Cough cough. Sister-in-law, I'm not comforting you. Everything I say comes from the bottom of my heart. Is it fate? Dean Chen Wanxiang looked at Ao Guang and thought to himself. Shortly after, he nodded and said, all right, you guys go and cultivate well. Don't be discouraged when Fatty Bro comes back, yes. Buzz. Buzz buzz buzz, come here. In the Emperor's Star Secret Realm, Chen Hao waved his hand and bound the crazed Wanishue to his side. Suppress him. Buzz. Buzz buzz buzz. Mysterious runes overflowed from the space between Chen Hao's eyebrows, directly imprinting on Wanishue's glabella. Ah! Wanishue let out a scream of terror. His crazed and unfocused eyes finally regained consciousness. Looking at Fatty Bro who was holding him in his arms, Wanishue's tears flowed out. He turned his face to the side, not daring to look at Chen Hao, and said, Fatty, you just like to see me make a fool of myself, right? I'm begging you, let me into your mind, I don't want to face it again. You pig, you don't believe Fatty Bro's words? I already told you, this is the Immortal Emperor Tomb. What is this? It can block almost everything, but in front of it, we have no secrets. Even the mental space exists in name only. Then let me die. I don't want to drag you down. Fuck. Who do you think I am? Since I, fat bro, brought you here, I will bring you out. If we die together. If we live together. Fatty. I know you're a good person, but I can't let you die with me because of my selfishness. I've already made up my mind. As Wani Shui said this, he suddenly thought of something. His face suddenly became so red that it almost dripped blood. However, he resolutely raised his head, looked into Chen Hao's eyes, and said in an extremely low voice, unless you want me, and dual cultivate with me. 1,500 years. They had already stepped into the Emperor Star's secret realm for a total of 1,500 years. They had fought countless times, killed countless times, and faced countless life and death situations. Chen Hao, the god of slaughter who had once dominated the world with his own strength, no longer had that kind of strength that could sweep across those of the same level. Instead, every step he took was difficult, and every step he took was filled with trepidation. Even so, the dangerous situations where he barely managed to survive in the cracks of death were always with him, the powerful Xiao Mantian and his wife, the high and mighty young master of saber and sword Ding Hao, who looked down upon the world, the young master of divine movement, Feng Wuying, who possessed incredible battle prowess, and the two peerless sword geniuses, Qing Yang and Miao Xian, were all existences that Chen Hao couldn't fight against for the time being. In these 1,500 years, Chen Hao had encountered these experts, but he could only avoid them. However, the main reason was Wani Shui. If not for Wani Shui, the god of slaughter, Chen Hao would not have any restrictions. With his concealment skills and great teleportation technique, he could go anywhere he wanted. This was something that Wani Shui had seen very clearly after experiencing many dangers together. At the beginning, she could only follow the fatty because of her desire to survive. But now, Wani Shui finally did not want to persist. Because the token had been activated, but she had not been summoned out. To be precise, she had not connected with the outside world's summoning aura. Where was her hope? Moreover, the fatty had already sacrificed enough for her. At the same time, she also saw that in the near future, the fatty would be destroyed because of her. Rather than dragging the fatty down with her, it was better for her to let go early. After all, in this immortal emperor tomb, even entering the fatty's mind was useless. No matter what, she was filled with gratitude towards the wretched and shameless fatty. Because she knew that if the fatty wanted to give up on her, she would have no way to resist. She would have died long ago. How could she have survived until now? And in this situation, dual cultivation with Chen Hao's soul and flesh, linking her mind and will, was the only way to save her life and not be a burden to Chen Hao. It could also help Chen Hao. After 1,500 years of life and death together, Wani Shui had no complaints and was willing to give herself to the fatty. Even if she died in the end, it could be considered as repaying the fatty for taking care of her for 1,500 years. This was love. This was love. People were afraid of falling in love. In the past, the Prince Charming in her dreams should have been a handsome, talented young man with unparalleled combat strength. Even though fate had entangled her with the fatty, and she had been amazed by the fatty's amazing talent time and time again, she had never thought that she would fall in love with the fatty. This was because the fatty's image was not flattering at all. He was completely different from the perfect Tao companion she had envisioned. But now, the fatty was the most perfect person in her eyes. So handsome, so confident, so cute. Please don't vomit. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. In fact, once a person fell in love, their appearance was nothing more than fleeting clouds. The fatty looked at Wani Shui, who had become tender and charming due to shyness, and her eyes were filled with pleading and endless emotions. He was stunned and awkwardly scratched his head. What to do? This brother had promised the girls to keep his chastity, but, it seemed, this was really going with the flow. It was very, very natural, and it was natural to the point of being forced. What about agreeing? Should I agree, or should I agree? What about being a beast, or a beast? I can't be worse than a beast, I really don't know how to begin, and I don't know how to end, Sister Shui, this, you don't need to take responsibility. Everything was done by my own will. It has nothing to do with you. Your Tao companion is prettier than me, and has an S-grade divine ability. No matter what, she is stronger than me. Please don't worry. If we can get out of here alive, I will pretend that nothing happened between us, as long as you occasionally, remember me, if you can secretly see me. Cough cough. Chen Hao was a little dumbfounded. Wasn't this the legendary mistress? Sister Shui was actually willing to be his mistress. Chapter 13-16. Fuck, I can still be so charming even after transforming into a fatty. This is too unbelievable. However, I seem to have already agreed. But, since you said so, are you serious? The fatty, who seemed to be a little conflicted and embarrassed, suddenly revealed a surprised and excited expression. He rubbed his palms as he looked at Wani Shui and said. Wani Shui was slightly stunned, and a faint sadness flashed across the depths of her eyes. Then, she nodded with certainty and took the initiative to throw herself into the fatty's arms. She leaned her face against the extremely spacious and soft chest that was even more awesome than a woman's. She hugged the waist that she could not completely hug, and was like a little bird that was dependent on someone. Over the course of 1,500 years, there were many times when it was unavoidable to have some intimate contact, but it was unavoidable. From beginning to end, the fatty had never really taken advantage of Wani Shui, not even the simplest of hugs. And now, Chen Hao finally slowly raised his hands that were placed at unknown places and hugged Wani Shui's slender and weak waist. Shui, the person was like her name. Wani Shui was like a girl made of water, just like her azure silk jade wave technique. Perhaps, only a woman like her would be able to create a cultivation method that could make one's soul happy and comfortable. Her delicate body trembled. Wani Shui used all her strength and tightly hugged Chen Hao. It was as if she wanted to rub herself into the fatty's body. That kind of strong feeling was expressed incisively and vividly. There was no longer any concealment, a woman's feelings came slowly. But when it really came, it was much stronger and more lasting than a man's. Just like Wani Shui, who had just taken her first step, she could no longer restrain the feelings in her heart. The harem army has one more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Cough cough, I can't help it, I can't help it. I'm originally pure, but I can't help it. I can only surrender. What Wani Shui did not know was that the fatty was muttering in his mind. But, at this time, if I still use this disguise, I'm afraid, it's not appropriate. Chen Hao suddenly thought of a problem. It had to be said that Chen Hao, who was naturally romantic, was more serious than anyone else when it came to feelings. Every time he accepted a woman, he would definitely not be perfunctory. Once he accepted a woman, he would have to shoulder the responsibility of a man. In his opinion, those who did not have the goal of getting married were all hooligans. In this place, they naturally did not have the goal of becoming Tao companions. But he didn't want to be a hooligan. That was despicable. Wani Shui felt that although this was the first time the fatty had truly held her waist, it was just like that, without any extra movements, and there was no reaction for a long time. This made Wani Shui a little disappointed, especially when she thought of the fatty's Tao partner, Si Xian. She was even more disappointed. Perhaps the fatty really didn't like her from the beginning to the end? With such a devastatingly beautiful Tao companion, there was indeed nothing about her that attracted him. However, thinking that Si Xian still retained her primordial yin body, Wani Shui's disappointed heart became slightly excited. Will I be fatty's first woman? This thought uncontrollably grew in Wani Shui's mind. If so, his memory of me will definitely be even more profound. I don't expect to be with him day and night. As long as he thinks of me a few more times, and looks at me, that will be enough. I must let go of all my reservations. Thinking of this, Wani Shui suddenly gathered her courage, tiptoed, raised her head, and closed her eyes. Her heartbeat suddenly sped up by several times, and her bright red lips approached the fatty's face. Shyness, excitement, anticipation, excitement, all kinds of emotions attacked Wanishue's nerves. But, wait. The fatty's voice suddenly stopped Wanishue. Wanishue, who was startled, immediately widened her eyes. The fire that ignited in her heart was immediately extinguished by the torrential rain. She looked at the fatty with tears in her eyes. Don't misunderstand, Sister Shue. Big Brother has some secrets that I must tell you first. Otherwise, Big Brother can't bear to tell you, and also let you down, phew. Wanishue, who was almost nervously holding her breath, finally let out a sigh of relief when she heard the fatty's words. Her expression, which was close to tears, was much better. Seeing this, the fatty couldn't help but smile. He couldn't help but stretch out his hand to pinch Wanishue's nose, and said, I just found out that you're so cute. Alright, back to the main topic. The first thing Big Brother wants to tell you is that I have already cultivated the Great Change Movement technique to the ultimate realm. Oh, you're really amazing. Ah. Wanishue said absent-mindedly. She was already clear about how high the fatty's talent was. It wasn't strange for him to cultivate any divine ability to the ultimate realm. But halfway through, she suddenly cried out in shock, and looked at the smiling fatty. Great. Great Change Movement technique? Fatty, you can't be saying, your current appearance is a disguise, right? The truth is so. Sigh, I can't help it. I'm too ugly, ugly to the depths of my soul. People vomit when they see me, flowers wilt when they see me. Big Brother, I'm really embarrassed to see people with my true appearance. It's not my fault that I'm ugly, but it's wrong to come out and scare people. Don't you think so? Nonsense. Then restore your original body, and let me see. I don't believe that I'm as ugly as you say. Buzz. The fatty didn't say anything else, and a mysterious aura suddenly surged out from his body. Every cell in his body seemed to come alive in an instant. Rays of light bloomed, making Wanishue unable to see what was happening. She only knew that the fatty was restoring his original appearance. Hiss. The last ray of light disappeared. Ah! Wanishue let out a scream. Her eyes widened, and she covered her mouth, staring blankly at the figure in front of her. See, I still scared you. Sigh, Sister Shue, it's not too late for you to regret. The figure said in a rather sad and lonely tone. No, fatty, don't misunderstand. In my eyes, no matter what you look like, it doesn't affect me, really. I like you. I like you, your heart, and not your appearance. What does beauty and ugliness count for? I really don't care. It's just that I was scared when I saw you, really. Wanishue said as she hugged Chenhao's waist again. Although she said so, she had to admit in her heart that it was ugly, really ugly. How could a person be so ugly? Of course, like she said, she didn't care about beauty or ugliness. Sigh, you've already closed your eyes, and don't dare to look at me. I know that you're telling the truth, but I'm really so ugly that it can shake the heavens and move the earth. Seeing me, you don't have any interest, right? Take me. Now. Wanishue's body trembled, but immediately, she raised her head and kissed Chenhao's lips. She was straightforward, without the slightest bit of reluctance, without ambiguity. She wanted to prove that she really didn't care. But, haha. The fatty laughed lightly, and stretched out his hand, blocking Wanishue's soft lips. At the same time, his body once again flickered with light. The dazzling light caused Wanishue to widen her eyes. She was smart, and at the first moment, she revealed a faint smile, and spat out a disdainful sentence, liar. I said, how could there be such an ugly person in the world? Chapter 13-17. The dazzling light disappeared, and Wanishue, who was speaking, was dumbfounded. Smile, it was still that slightly curved mouth, like a harmless smile, but at this moment, it was filled with an evil charm. What kind of figure was that? Handsome, elegant, a pear tree suppressing begonia, so handsome that it was earth-shattering, so handsome that heaven and earth could not tolerate it. An extraordinarily handsome, angular face, star-like bright, deep, distant eyes, from head to toe exuded a manly aura that would make any woman's heart palpitate. Wan Yishui was stunned. Dumbfounded. But immediately. Pfft! Wan Yishui burst out laughing, covering her mouth. Fatty, am I so easy to fool? There is no such ugly person in the world, but there is also no such handsome person, right? The ultimate realm of the Great Change technique, no matter what you transform into, it will be the same as the real thing. Besides, no matter what you look like, it really doesn't matter to me. Why are you so handsome? This time, it was Qin Hao's turn to be dumbfounded. What the hell was this? This is my real appearance. Qin Hao felt a headache. It seemed, it should be. Qin Hao temporarily could not prove that his current appearance was real. Just as Wan Yishui said, the ultimate realm of the Great Change technique, no matter what he transformed into, for Wan Yishui, she could not tell whether it was real or fake. Therefore, what was fake could be real, and what was real could be fake. It all depended on what Wan Yishui thought, but... Sister Shui, this is the appearance of Ming Zun. Whether you believe it or not, but if we do that, you will understand that brother is not lying to you. Oh. Wan Yishui's face reddened, looking around at the seal enchantment that Qin Hao forcibly propped up. Seeing that the enchantment was gradually cracking, obviously unable to withstand the situation for long, although Wan Yishui felt embarrassed, she still lowered her head and took the initiative to say in a mosquito-like voice, Then, let's begin. What's the hurry? Qin Hao waved his hand again. Wait for me to finish. The second thing I want to tell you is that I have a Dao companion. I know, I don't care, you don't have to take responsibility, everything, you have no choice, I am willing. Cough, I have to say, I have a Dao companion, and there are many. Not only the Qin Si you know, directly, Qin Si is ranked last. No. It can't be. Many. Qin Si is ranked last. Wan Yishui stared blankly for a moment, then he seemed to have thought of something. A trace of excitement flashed across his face as he said, Why are you telling me this, oh? When Wan Yishui was caught off guard, Qin Hao suddenly attacked. Rather than letting this girl take the initiative to start, he was the first to break through. It was he was facing a woman, Chen Yishui, Chen, was. But there was one thing, once Qin Yishui, Qin Yishui, made a decision, he would not be perfunctory, nor would he be indecisive. At this time, he was the decisive him of killing. Although Qin Hao used his actions to stop Wan Yishui's question, and did not answer, the smart Wan Yishui, who did not lose her rationality even in the midst of passionate love, understood that since the fatty told her the second point, it meant that he did not want to avoid responsibility, but to take responsibility. After all, if he pulled up his pants and did not recognize her, there was simply no need to tell Wan Yishui these things. Similarly, Wan Yishui could confirm Qin Hao's thoughts. The most important point was that Qin Hao had many Dao companions. He was not afraid of one, but he was afraid of many. If there was only Si Xian, then there might be one for all living beings. But if there were already many, what harm was there in adding one more? A warm current surged in the depths of Wan Yishui's heart, but very quickly, she lost the ability to think. Hug. Kiss. Wretched claws that wandered on the graceful and delicate body. It had been a long time, but it was practiced and full of skill. As an experienced killing god, Qin Hao, against Wan Yishui, who maintained her primordial yin body, was absolutely at ease. And Qin Hao, who had not had intimate contact with a woman for a long time, was really excited and frozen in his actions this time. Especially when he took off the robe and soft armor, and really touched the soft skin that was as soft as water, it made Qin Hao completely ignite himself. After tasting the forbidden fruit, after such a long time, even if Qin Hao's state of mind and will were strong, the delicate balance of yin and yang in his body would be tilted. And now, without a doubt, this tilt was completely detonated. Under the dry firewood and the raging fire, the fusion of ice and fire, the fusion of yin and yang, after more than 1,500 years together, finally merged today. Boom! The moment when the soul and the body truly merged, the two actually directly entered the highest realm of the fusion of soul and body. At this moment, the two of them obviously did not have any thoughts, but it had to be said that this point, whether it was Qin Hao or Wan Yishui, neither could have thought of it, and also did not think that it could be done so easily. But this seemingly miraculous and inconceivable fusion of soul and body was actually natural, a matter of course. 1,500 years of life and death together, hundreds of tribulations and thousands of difficulties, 9 deaths and 1 life, a single man and a single woman naturally collided into the sparks of love. Only, one was unwilling to start, the other felt that there would be no end. Now, facing more and more terrifying danger, to break the deadlock. But just like this, could it be so simple to directly enter the highest realm of the fusion of soul and body? It could not. After all, this was not just a matter of emotional compatibility. Even when Qin Hao was with Xiao Mei, Leng Ning Huan, and Leng Ning Lu for the first time, he could not do it. The most important reason was that Wan Yishui had automatically activated the Azure Silk Jade Wave technique. This was a kind of extremely soft and gentle water profound meaning, just like when Qin Hao first encountered Wan Yishui's Azure Silk Jade Wave technique, that kind of feeling was like a cleansing of the soul. And now, in the fusion of soul and body, the Azure Silk Jade Wave technique that was naturally activated, produced profound meaning and effects, who knows how many times more than when Wan Yishui was at her level. This was simply a peerless technique that was specially created for dual cultivation. If one did not personally experience it, one would not be able to feel its magic. Of course, even Wan Yishui, who created this technique, would not be able to discover its true value before she maintained her primordial yin body. Using it to condense an illusion in battle. That was like using a priceless antique blue and white porcelain to wash one's feet, a waste. Hiss. Kacha. Boom. Not long after, the protective boundary that Qin Hao had originally condensed was annihilated by the extremely terrifying pressure of the immortal Emperor tomb. In a hidden valley, Qin Hao and Wan Yishui, who were already in the fusion of yin and yang, did not feel anything, allowing the terrifying pressure to descend upon them without any reaction, doing what they should do. Chapter 13:18. Even Wan Yishui, who couldn't withstand such a terrifying pressure before, wasn't affected at all. She was immersed in the endless beauty and comfort, welcoming someone's gentle whipping. The great circulation, because they had entered the highest realm of the fusion of spirit and body, had already begun. Endless immortal light twined and thousands of Tao rolled. It cleansed their souls and bodies. Rub, rub, rub. Master is indeed a person of great fortune. In the deepest part of Qin Hao's mind, there was a solid figure whose gender could not be determined. To be more precise, it was neither male nor female. It was not even human. Even though Qin Hao see do not hear do not see do not hear do not know do not see do not hear do not know do not see do not hear do not know do not see do not hear do not know do not see do not hear do not know do not see do not hear do not know do not see do not hear do not know do not see do not hear do not know do not see do not hear do not know do not see do not hear do not know do not see do not hear do not know do not see do not hear. This figure was naturally the old god, who had followed Qin Hao's nirvana of self. Moreover, after this fellow had absorbed a huge amount of spiritual items that made Qin Hao vomit blood, it had finally completed its nirvana of self and obtained its current, golden body. It was neither male nor female, like a human and like an artifact. Like an artifact, it was a strange accessory that grew directly from its body. Qin Hao had named it the 100 Transformations Vajra. It was truly 100 transformations. It could transform into any powerful weapon, protective equipment, pill furnace, flying device, and so on. Water can carry all things. At the extreme, it can carry thousands of Tao. This is obviously caused by the aura of the green silk jade ripple technique. This is definitely the strongest dual cultivation technique I've ever seen. There's no other. Although the old god couldn't see the current state of the two, he could judge the extent of the fusion of yin and yang based on the changes in the aura in Chenhao's mind and the effects. Sigh. This is depressing. I thought that it wouldn't be long before Master had to rely on my awesome ability. Now it seems like it will take a while. Old god shook his head that was as sharp as an arrow and said. From the moment he awakened until now, it had already been 1,500 years. Naturally, this was the time he spent in the Emperor's Star's secret realm. But in such a long period of time, his true self had successfully undergone nirvanic rebirth. Along with Chenhao's rise in cultivation base, his strength had actually skyrocketed, yet he hadn't displayed his overpowered combat prowess even once. At the very most, he could only answer questions and answer questions. He thought that his chance would come soon after entering the immortal Emperor tomb, a place filled with dangers at every step, but now, his master had slept with Wanishui. So be it, the effects were so strong. The god was sure that Wanishui's growth would be terrifying, similarly, his master's benefits would also be terrifying. However, I will have my chance in the end. Not to mention the spirits of all living beings in the Emperor's Star's secret realm, even those monsters who are temporarily stronger than my master will not be able to deal with them after they enter the core of the immortal Emperor tomb. At that time, it will be my time to shine. Hee hee. The endlessly charming scene finally calmed down as Chenhao and Wanishui stepped onto the peak at the same time. The great cycle, at this time, could be considered to have truly begun. At this moment, the two of them, whose souls had become clear, finally felt the great circulation that could be described as terrifying and inconceivable. Suzuet. SSS. S. Of S. Gods's Azure Silk Jade Ripple Technique. In a moment, Chenhao understood the reason. Feeling Wanishui's soft and delicate body, he was slightly excited. I really didn't expect this to be an extremely powerful dual cultivation technique. With it, what does Xiao Shui and the others have to worry about? Phew. Chenhao let out a long sigh of relief in his heart, calmed his mind, and merged into the fusion of yin and yang with Wanishui. Although she was forced by the circumstances, it had to be said that Wanishui was a woman that Chenhao willingly accepted. Now that she had given him the precious Yuanin body, no matter what, Chenhao had to cherish it. Wang. Chenhao activated the recitation of the general outline of the Great Tao in the depths of his soul, pushing forward the comprehension of the boundless laws of Tao, the state of mind, the will, the 7 emotions, the 6 desires, and the other most fundamental mysteries, all of which appeared in his connected and fused soul. Cultivation, increasing his strength, was the most important thing. At the same time, Wanishui, who had awakened, was also happy, and excited. She activated the origin of the Azure Silk Jade Ripple technique to the extreme, merging it into the heart lake of the two of them. With the heart belonging, the mind would be at ease. Wanishui, who had given herself to the fatty, not to mention the joy of the fusion of soul and body at this moment, the true balance of yin and yang, as well as the transcendence of the soul, made her feel like she had been reborn. This was the transcendence of the state of mind. Even if she did not do anything now, it would be a new breakthrough on the martial way for Wanishui. Furthermore, how could she not do anything? She and the fatty was just the beginning. And now, in the fusion of soul and body, the appearance of the origin of the soul also allowed Wanishui to clearly see the appearance of the fatty. Although she did not want to admit it, but her happiness index had definitely soared. There was no other way, who did not want their man to be handsome? Ancient Chaos Great Thousand World, in the deepest part of the temple. The women in the cycle of reincarnation had finally finished their fusion and awakening. Each and every one of them had mixed feelings, tightly hugging each other. Although they were not in an absolute cycle of reincarnation, and Yilan had also provided the best cultivation conditions, reincarnation was reincarnation, and the improvement it brought to them was considerable. Especially the improvement of the soul and the state of mind. At the very least, their mental states of cultivation wouldn't be affected because of Chen Hao's departure. This was a kind of precipitation, a kind of buffer. This is the spiritual helmet that connects to the space of the immortal world. Among you, little Hui and little Wu, if activated here, should be born in the space of the immortal world. If, in the great world of CND, using their spiritual helmets, should be born in the space of the immortal world of the great world of CND. This is because your real place of birth, and not because of ancient chaos. Of course, if your real place of birth belongs to the great thousand world and has the strength to contend with the immortal emperor and ancient chaos, you may be born in your place of birth. The others, no matter where they are, will be born in our ancient chaos. Hao was born on earth. So, little Hui and little Wu, you can decide whether to enter now or wait until the great world of CND. To the great world of CND. These years, your improvement in ancient chaos is very shocking, including Chen Nan, Pan Long, and the others. With your current strength, even in the great world of CND, among those of the same realm, you are all extremely outstanding existences. Our ancient chaos has just started, and now you are already standing at the top. The great world of CND is the most suitable world for you to grow. Hao and Si Xian have already told me about the situation there, and the great world of CND is the most suitable for the growth of geniuses. So, this time, I have gathered all of you here to send you on your way.